Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator by Roald Dahl. Read by James Bolam. The last time we saw Charlie, he was riding high above his hometown in the great glass lift. Only a short while before, Mr Wonka had told him that the whole gigantic, fabulous chocolate factory was his, and now our small friend was returning in triumph with his entire family to take over. The passengers in the lift, just to remind you, were Charlie Bucket, our hero, Mr Willy Wonka, chocolate maker extraordinary, Mr and Mrs Bucket, Charlie's father and mother, Grandpa Joe and Grandma Josephine, Mr Bucket's father and mother, Grandpa George and Grandma Georgina, Mrs Bucket's father and mother. Grandma Josephine, Grandma Georgina and Grandpa George were still in bed, the bed having been pushed on board just before take-off. Grandpa Joe, as you remember, had got out of bed to go round the chocolate factory with Charlie. The great glass lift was 1,000 feet up and cruising nicely. The sky was brilliant blue. Everybody on board was wildly excited at the thought of going to live in the famous chocolate factory. Grandpa Joe was singing, Charlie was jumping up and down, Mr and Mrs Bucket were smiling for the first time in years, and the three old ones in bed were grinning at one another with pink toothless gums. "What in the world keeps this crazy thing up in the air?" croaked Grandma Josephine. "Madam," said Mr Wonka, "it is not a lift any longer. Lifts only go up and down inside buildings. But now that it has taken us up into the sky, it has become an elevator. It is the Great Glass Elevator." "And what keeps it up?" said Grandma Josephine. "Sky hooks," said Mr Wonka. "You amaze me," said Grandma Josephine. "Dear lady," said Mr Wonka, "you are new to the scene. When you have been with us a little longer, nothing will amaze you." "These sky hooks," said Grandma Josephine. "I assume one end is hooked onto this contraption we're riding in, right?" "Right," said Mr Wonka. "What's the other end hooked onto?" said Grandma Josephine. "Every day," said Mr Wonka, "I get deafer and deafer. Remind me, please, to call up my ear doctor the moment we get back." "Charlie," said Grandma Josephine, "I don't think I trust this gentleman very much." "Nor do I," said Grandma Georgina. "He footles around." Charlie leaned over the bed and whispered to the two old women. "Please," he said, "don't spoil everything. Mr Wonka is a fantastic man. He's my friend. I love him." "Charlie's right," whispered Grandpa Joe, joining the group. "Now you be quiet, Josie, and don't make trouble." "We must hurry," said Mr Wonka. "We have so much time and so little to do. No, wait, cross that out, reverse it, thank you. Now back to the factory," he cried, clapping his hands once and springing 2 feet in the air with 2 feet. "Back we fly to the factory. But we must go up before we can come down. We must go higher and higher." "What did I tell you?" said Grandma Josephine. "The man's cracked." "Be quiet, Josie," said Grandpa Joe. "Mr Wonka knows exactly what he's doing." "He's cracked as a crab," said Grandma Georgina. "We must go tremendously high." He pressed a brown button. The elevator shuddered, and then with a fearful whooshing noise it shot vertically upward like a rocket. "Stop!" yelled Grandma Josephine. "Joe, you make this stop. I want to get off." "Go down," yelled Grandpa George. "No, no," Mr Wonka yelled back. "We've got to go up." "But why?" they all shouted at once. "Because the higher we are when we start coming down, the faster we'll all be when we hit." "When we hit what?" they cried. "The factory, of course," answered Mr Wonka. "You must be whackers," said Grandma Josephine. "We'll all be pulpified." "That," said Mr Wonka, "is a chance we shall have to take." "You're joking," said Grandma Josephine. "Madam," said Mr Wonka, "I never joke." Grandma Josephine screamed and disappeared under the bedclothes. Grandma Georgina clutched Grandpa George so tight he changed shape. Mr and Mrs Bucket stood hugging each other, speechless with fright. Only Charlie and Grandpa Joe kept moderately cool. But as the great elevator continued to streak upward, further and further away from the earth, even Charlie began to feel a trifle nervous. "Mr Wonka," he yelled above the noise, "what I don't understand is why we've got to come down at such a terrific speed. "My dear boy," Mr Wonka answered, "if we don't come down at a terrific speed, we'll never burst our way back in through the roof of the factory. It's not easy to punch a hole in a roof as strong as that." "But there's a hole in it already," said Charlie. "We made it when we came out." "Then we shall make another," said Mr Wonka. "Two holes are better than one. Any mouse will tell you that." Higher and higher rushed the great glass elevator, until soon they could see the countries and oceans of the earth spread out below them like a map. It was all very beautiful, but when you're standing on a glass floor looking down, it gives you a nasty feeling. Even Charlie was beginning to feel frightened now. "Mr Wonka," Charlie shouted, "don't you think this is about high enough?" "Very nearly," Mr Wonka answered, "but not quite. Don't talk to me now, please. I must watch things very carefully at this stage. Split-second timing, my boy. That's what it's got to be. You see this green button? I must press it at exactly the right instant. If I'm just half a second late, then we'll go too high." "What happens if we go too high?" asked Grandpa Joe. "Do please stop talking and let me concentrate," Mr Wonka said. At that precise moment, Grandma Josephine poked her head out from under the sheets and peered over the edge of the bed. Through the glass floor, she saw the entire continent of North America nearly 200 miles below and looking no bigger than a bar of chocolate. "Someone's got to stop this maniac," she screeched, and she shot out a wrinkled old hand and grabbed Mr Wonka by the coat-tails and yanked him backwards onto the bed. "No, no," cried Mr Wonka, struggling to free himself. "Let me go. I have things to see to. Don't disturb the pilot." "You madman!" shrieked Grandma Josephine, shaking Mr Wonka so fast his head became a blur. "You get us back home this instant." "Let me go," cried Mr Wonka. "I've got to press that button or we'll go too high. Let me go, let me go." But Grandma Josephine hung on. "Charlie," shouted Mr Wonka, "press the button, the green one, quick, quick, quick." Charlie leapt across the elevator and banged his thumb down on the green button. But as he did so, the elevator gave a mighty groan and rolled over on its side, and the rushing, whooshing noise stopped altogether. There was an eerie silence. "Too late!" cried Mr Wonka. "Oh, my goodness me, we're cooked!" As he spoke, the bed with the three old ones in it, and Mr Wonka on top, lifted gently off the floor and hung suspended in mid-air. Charlie and Grandpa Joe and Mr and Mrs Bucket also floated upwards, so that in a twink the entire company, as well as the bed, were floating around like balloons inside the great glass elevator. "Now look what you've done," said Mr Wonka, floating about. "What happened?" Grandma Josephine called out. She had floated clear of the bed and was hovering near the ceiling in her nightshirt. "Did we go too far?" Charlie asked. "Too far?" cried Mr Wonka. "Of course we went too far. You know where we've gone, my friends. We've gone into orbit." They gaped, they gasped, they stared. "We are now rushing around the earth at 17,000 miles an hour, Mr Wonka said. How does that grab you?" "I'm choking," gasped Grandma Georgina. "I can't breathe." "Of course you can't," said Mr Wonka. "There's no air up here." He sort of swam across under the ceiling to a button marked oxygen. He pressed it. "You'll be all right now," he said. "Breathe away." "This is the queerest feeling," Charlie said, swimming about. "I feel like a bubble." "It's great," said Grandpa Joe. "I feel as though I don't weigh anything at all." "You don't," said Mr Wonka. "None of us weighs anything, not even 1 ounce." The three old ones, Grandpa George, Grandma Georgina and Grandma Josephine, were trying frantically to get out of bed, but without success. The bed was floating about in mid-air. They, of course, were also floating, and every time they got above the bed and tried to lie down, they simply floated up out of it. Charlie and Grandpa Joe were hooting with laughter. "What's so funny?" said Grandma Josephine. "We've got you out of bed at last," said Grandpa Joe. Mr Wonka's great glass elevator was not the only thing orbiting the Earth at that particular time. 2 days before, the United States of America had successfully launched its first space hotel, a gigantic sausage-shaped capsule no less than 1,000 feet long. It was called Space Hotel USA, and it was the marvel of the space age. It had inside it a tennis court, a swimming pool, a gymnasium, a children's playroom, and 500 luxury bedrooms, each with a private bath. It was fully air-conditioned. It was also equipped with a gravity-making machine so that you didn't float about inside it. You walked normally. This extraordinary object was now speeding round and round the Earth at a height of 240 miles. Guests were to be taken up and down by a taxi service of small capsules blasting off from Cape Kennedy every hour on the hour, Mondays to Fridays. But as yet there was nobody on board at all, not even an astronaut. The reason for this was that no one had really believed such an enormous thing would ever get off the ground without blowing up. But the launching had been a great success, and now that the Space Hotel was safely in orbit, there was a tremendous hustle and bustle to send up the first guests. It was rumoured that the President of the United States himself was going to be among the first to stay in the hotel. And of course there was a mad rush by all sorts of other people across the world to book rooms. But you cannot send guests to an hotel unless there are lots of people there to look after them. And that explains why there was yet another interesting object orbiting the Earth at that moment. This was the large transport capsule containing the entire staff for Space Hotel USA. There were managers, assistant managers, desk clerks, waitresses, bellboys, chambermaids, pastry chefs, and hall porters. The capsule they were travelling in was manned by 3 famous astronauts, Shuckworth, Shanks, and Showler, all of them handsome, clever, and brave. "In exactly an hour," said Shuckworth, speaking to the passengers over the loudspeaker, "we shall link up with Space Hotel USA, your happy home for the next 10 years. And any moment now, if you look straight ahead, aha, I see something there. That must be it, folks. There's definitely something up there ahead of us." Shuckworth fired a couple of small rockets to make the capsule go faster, and they began to catch up very quickly. "Hey," yelled Showler, "this isn't our Space Hotel." "Holy rats," cried Shanks. "What in the name of Nebuchadnezzar is it?" "Quick, give me the telescope," yelled Shuckworth. With one hand he focused the telescope, and with the other he flipped the switch connecting him to ground control. "Hello, Houston," he cried into the mic. "There's something crazy going on up here. There's a thing orbiting ahead of us, and it's not like any spaceship I've ever seen, that's for sure." "Describe it at once," ordered ground control in Houston. It's all made of glass, and it's kind of square, and it's got lots of people inside it. They're all floating about like fish in a tank." "How many astronauts on board?" "None," said Shuckworth. "They can't possibly be astronauts." "What makes you say that?" "Because at least 3 of them are in nightshirts." "Don't be a fool, Shuckworth," snapped ground control. "I swear it," cried poor Shuckworth. "There's 3 of them in nightshirts. 2 old women and 1 old man. They're about 90 years old." "You've gone mad, Shuckworth," shouted ground control. "You're fired. Give me Shanks." "Shanks speaking," said Shanks. "Now listen here, Houston. There's these 3 old birds in nightshirts floating around this crazy glass box, and there's a funny little guy with a pointed beard, wearing a black top hat and a plum-coloured velvet tailcoat and bottle-green trousers—" "Stop!" screamed ground control. "That's not all," said Shanks. "There's also a little boy about 10 years old." "That's no boy, you idiot," shouted ground control. "That's an astronaut in disguise. It's a midget astronaut dressed up as a little boy. Those old people are astronauts too. They're all in disguise." "But who are they?" cried Shanks. "How the heck would I know?" said ground control. "Are they heading for our Space Hotel?" "That's exactly where they're heading," said Shanks. "I can see the Space Hotel now about a mile ahead." "They're going to blow it up," yelled ground control. "This is—" Suddenly his voice was cut off, and Shanks heard another quite different voice in his earphones. It was deep and rasping. "I'll take charge of this," said the deep, rasping voice. "Are you there, Shanks?" "Of course I'm here," said Shanks. "But how dare you butt in? Keep your big nose out of this. Who are you anyway?" "This is the President of the United States," said the voice. "And this is the Wizard of Oz," said Shanks. "Who are you kidding?" "Cut the piffle, Shanks," snapped the President. "This is a national emergency." "Good grief," said Shanks, turning to Shuckworth and Showler. "It really is the President. It's President Gillygrass himself. Well, hello there, Mr. President, sir." "How many people are there in that glass capsule?" rasped the President. 8, said Shanks, "all floating." "Floating?" "We're outside the pull of gravity here, Mr. President. Everything floats. We'd be floating ourselves if we weren't strapped down. Didn't you know that?" "Of course I knew it," said the President.
Whoever heard of a bed in a spacecraft?
I swear it's a bed, said Shanks.
You must be loopy, Shanks, declared the President. Let me talk to Showler.
Showler here, Mr. President, said Showler. It's a great honour to talk to you, Mr. President, sir.
Shut up, said the President. Just tell me what you see.
It's a bed, all right, Mr. President. I can see it through my telescope. It's got sheets and blankets and a mattress.
That's not a bed, you drivelling thickwit, yelled the President. Can't you understand it's a trick? It's a bomb. It's a bomb disguised as a bed. They're going to blow up our magnificent space hotel.
Who's they, Mr. President, sir? Said Showler.
Don't talk so much and let me think, said the President.
There were a few moments of silence. Down in the huge control room at Houston, 100 controllers sat motionless in front of their dials and monitors, waiting to see what orders the President would give next to the astronauts.
I've just thought of something, said the President. Don't you have a television camera up there in front of your spacecraft, Showler?
Sure do, Mr. President.
Then switch it on, you nit, and let all of us down here get a look at this object.
I never thought of that, said Showler. No wonder you're the President. Here goes. He reached out and switched on the TV camera in the nose of the spacecraft, and at that moment 500 million people all over the world who had been listening in on their radios rushed to their television sets. On their screens they saw exactly what Shockworth and Shanks and Showler were seeing. A weird glass box in splendid orbit around the Earth, and inside the box, seen not too clearly, but seen nonetheless, were 7 grown-ups and 1 small boy and a big double bed, all floating. And far off in the distance, beyond the glass box, the TV watchers could see the enormous, glistening, silvery shape of Space Hotel USA. But it was the sinister glass box itself that everyone was staring at, and the cargo of sinister creatures inside it. 8 astronauts so tough and strong they didn't even bother to wear spacesuits. Who were these people? And what in heaven's name was that big, evil-looking thing disguised as a double bed? The President had said it was a bomb, and he was probably right. But what were they going to do with it? All across America and Canada and Russia and Japan and India and China and Africa and England and France and Germany and everywhere else in the world, a kind of panic began to take hold of the television watchers.
"Keep well clear of them, Showler," ordered the President over the radio link.
"Sure will, Mr. President," Showler answered. "I sure will." Inside the great glass elevator there was also a good deal of excitement. Charlie and Mr. Wonka and all the others could see clearly the huge silvery shape of Space Hotel USA about a mile ahead of them, and behind them was the smaller, but still pretty enormous, transport capsule. The great glass elevator, not looking at all great now beside these 2 monsters, was in the middle, and of course everybody, even Grandma Josephine, knew very well what was going on. They even knew that the 3 astronauts in charge of the transport capsule were called Shockworth, Shanks and Showler. The whole world knew about these things. "What a load of luck!" cried Mr. Wonka. "We've landed ourselves slap in the middle of the biggest space operation of all time." "We've landed ourselves in the middle of a nasty mess," said Grandma Josephine. "Turn back at once." "No, Grandma," said Charlie. "We've got to watch it now. We must see the transport capsule linking up with the Space Hotel." Mr. Wonka floated right up close to Charlie. "Let's beat them to it, Charlie," he whispered. "Let's get there first and go aboard the Space Hotel ourselves." Charlie gulped. Then he said softly, "It's impossible. You've got to have all sorts of special gadgets to link up with another spacecraft, Mr. Wonka." "My elevator could link up with a crocodile if it had to. Just leave it to me." "Grandpa Joe," cried Charlie, "did you hear that? We're going to link up with the Space Hotel and go on board." "Yippee!" shouted Grandpa Joe. "But what if they come after us?" said Mr. Bucket, speaking for the first time. "What if they capture us?" said Mrs. Bucket. "What if my beard were made of green spinach?" cried Mr. Wonka. "Bunkum and Tommy Rot! You'll never get anywhere if you go about what-ifing like that. Would Columbus have discovered America if he said, 'What if I sink on the way over? What if I meet pirates? What if I never come back?' He wouldn't even have started. We want no what-ifers around here, right, Charlie? Off we go then, but wait. This is a very tricky manoeuvre and I'm going to need help. There are 3 lots of buttons we have to press, all in different parts of the elevator. I shall take those 2 over there, the white and the black. Mr. Wonka made a funny blowing noise with his mouth and glided like a huge bird across the elevator to the white and black buttons, and there he hovered. "Grandpa Joe, sir, kindly station yourself beside that silver button there. Yes, that's the one. And you, Charlie, go up and stay floating beside that little golden button near the ceiling. I must tell you that each of these buttons fires booster rockets from different places outside the elevator. That's how we change direction. Grandpa Joe's rockets turn us to starboard, to the right. Charlie's turn us to port, to the left. Mine make us go higher or lower or faster or slower. All ready?" "No, wait," cried Charlie, who was floating exactly midway between the floor and the ceiling. "How do I get up to the ceiling?" He was thrashing his arms and legs violently, but getting nowhere. "My dear boy," said Mr. Wonka, "you can't swim in this stuff. It isn't water, you know. It's air, and very thin air at that. There's nothing to push against, so you have to use jet propulsion. Watch me. First, you take a deep breath, then you make a small round hole with your mouth, and you blow as hard as you can. If you blow downward, you jet propel yourself up. If you blow to the left, you shoot off to the right, and so on. You maneuver yourself like a spacecraft by using your mouth as a booster rocket." Suddenly everyone began practicing this business of flying about, and the whole elevator was filled with the blowings and snortings of the passengers.
"What in the world are they doing?"
shouted the President of the United States, staring at the screen. "Looks like some kind of war dance, Mr. President," answered Astronaut Showler over the radio.
"You mean the Red Indians?"
"I didn't say that, sir."
"Silence,"
said the President. Back in the elevator, Mr. Wonka was saying, "Please, please, do stop flying about. Keep still, everybody, so we can get on with the docking." "You miserable old mackerel," said Grandma Georgina, sailing past him. "Just when we started having a bit of fun, you want to stop it." In the end, the old people grew tired and out of breath, and everyone settled quietly into a floating position. "All set, Charlie and Grandpa Joe, sir?" said Mr. Wonka. "All set, Mr. Wonka," Charlie answered. "I'll give the order," said Mr. Wonka. "I'm the pilot. Don't fire your rockets until I tell you. And don't forget who is who. Charlie, your port. Grandpa Joe, your starboard." Mr. Wonka pressed one of his own two buttons, and immediately booster rockets began firing underneath the great glass elevator. The elevator leapt forward, but swerved violently to the right. "Harder port!" yelled Mr. Wonka. Charlie pressed his button. His rockets fired. The elevator swung back into line. "Steady as you go!" cried Mr. Wonka. "Starboard 10 degrees! Steady! Steady! Keep her there!" Soon they were hovering directly underneath the tail of the enormous silvery space hotel. "You see that little square door with the bolts on it?" said Mr. Wonka. "That's the docking entrance. Port a fraction. Steady! Starboard a bit. Good. Easy does it. We're nearly there." To Charlie, it felt as though he were in a tiny rowing boat underneath the stern of the biggest ship in the world. The space hotel towered over them. Half a mile back, Shuckworth, Shanks and Showler were keeping the television camera aimed all the time at the glass elevator. Across the world, millions and millions of people were clustered around their TV screens, watching tensely the drama being acted out 240 miles above the earth. In his study in the White House sat Lancelot R. Gilligrass, President of the United States of America, the most powerful man on earth. In this moment of crisis, all his most important advisers had been summoned urgently to his presence, and they were all there now, following closely on the giant television screen every move made by this dangerous-looking glass capsule and its 8 desperate-looking astronauts. The entire cabinet was present. The Chief of the Army was there, together with 4 other generals. There was the Chief of the Navy and the Chief of the Air Force, and a sword-swallower from Afghanistan who was the President's best friend. Standing nearest of all to the President was the Vice President, a huge lady of 89 with a whiskery chin. She had been the President's nurse when he was a baby, and her name was Miss Tibbs. Miss Tibbs was the power behind the throne. She stood no nonsense from anyone. There was absolute silence in the presidential study.
"They're going to link up," shouted the President. "They're going to board our space hotel."
"They're going to blow it up," cried the Chief of the Army. "Let's blow them up first. Crash, bang, walla, bang, 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 bang."
The Chief of the Army was wearing so many medal ribbons they covered the entire front of his tunic on both sides and spread down onto his trousers as well.
"Silence, you silly boy,"
said Miss Tibbs, and the Chief of the Army slunk into a corner.
Listen, said the President, the point is this: who are they, and where did they come from? Where's my chief spy?
Here, sir, Mr. President, sir, said the chief spy. He had a false moustache, a false beard, false eyelashes, false teeth, and a falsetto voice.
Knock, knock, said the President.
Who's there? Said the chief spy.
Courtney.
Courtney who?
Courtney won yet?
Said the President. There was a brief silence. The President asked you a question, said Miss Tibbs in an icy voice. Have you Courtney won yet? No, ma'am, not yet, said the chief spy, beginning to twitch. Well, here's your chance, snarled Miss Tibbs.
Quite right, said the President. Tell me immediately who those people are in the glass capsule.
Aha, said the chief spy, twirling his false moustache. That is a very difficult question.
You mean you don't know?
I mean, I do know, Mr. President. At least I think I know. Listen, we have just launched the finest hotel in the world, right?
Right.
And who is so madly jealous of this wonderful hotel of ours that he wants to blow it up?
Miss Tibbs, said the President.
Wrong, said the chief spy. Try again.
Well, said the President, thinking deeply, in that case, could it not perhaps be some other hotel owner who is envious of our lovely hotel?
Brilliant, cried the chief spy. Go on, sir. You're getting warm.
It's Mr. Savoy, said the President.
Warmer and warmer, Mr. President.
Mr. Ritz.
You're hot, sir. You're boiling hot. Go on.
I've got it, cried the President. It's Mr. Hilton.
Well done, sir, said the chief spy.
Are you sure it's him?
Not sure, but it's certainly a warm possibility. After all, Mr. Hilton's got hotels in just about every country in the world, but he hasn't got one in space. He must be madder than a maggot.
By gum, we'll soon fix this,
snapped the President, grabbing one of the 11 telephones on his desk.
Hello, he said into the phone. Hello, hello, hello. Where's the operator?
They won't answer you now, said Miss Tibbs. They're all watching television.
Well, this one'll answer, said the President, snatching up a bright red telephone.
This was the hotline direct to the Premier of Soviet Russia in Moscow.
It's just as likely to be the Russians as Mr. Hilton, the President went on. Don't you agree, Nanny?
It's bound to be the Russians, said Miss Tibbs.
Premier Yugetov speaking, said the voice from Moscow. What's on your mind, Mr. President?
Knock, knock, said the President.
Who's there? Said the Soviet Premier.
Warren.
Warren who?
War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy, said the President.
Now see here, you get off. You get those astronauts of yours off that space hotel of ours this instant. Otherwise, I'm afraid we're going to have to show you just where you get off, you get off.
Those astronauts are not Russians, Mr. President.
He's lying, said Miss Tibbs.
You're lying, said the President.
Not lying, sir, said Premier Yugetov. Have you looked closely at those astronauts in the glass box? I myself cannot see them too clearly on my TV screen, but one of them, the little one with the pointed beard and the top hat, has a distinctly Chinese look about him. In fact, he reminds me very much of my friend the Prime Minister of China.
Great garbage, cried the President, slamming down the red phone and picking up a porcelain one. The porcelain phone went direct to the head of the Chinese Republic in Peking.
Hello, 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 said the President.
Wings Fish and the Vegetable Store in Shanghai, said a small, distant voice. Mr. Wings speaking.
Nanny, cried the President, banging down the phone. I thought this was a direct line to the Premier.
It is, said Miss Tibbs. Try again. The President again picked up the receiver. Greetings, Honourable Mr. President, said a soft, faraway voice. Here is Assistant Premier Chuandat speaking. How can I do for you?
Knock, knock, said the President.
Who there?
Ginger.
Ginger who?
Ginger yourself much when you fell off the Great Wall of China, said the President. Okay, chew on that. Let me speak to Premier. How you been?
Much regret, Premier. How you been? Not here just a second, Mr. President.
Where is he?
He outside, mending a puncture on his bicycle.
Oh, no, he isn't, said the President. You can't fool me, you crafty old mandarin. At this very minute, he's boarding our magnificent space hotel with 7 other rascals to blow it up.
Excuse, please, Mr. President. You make big mistake.
No mistake, barked the President. And if you don't call 'em off right away, I'm going to tell my chief of the army to blow 'em all sky high. So chew on that, chew on that.
Hooray, said the chief of the army. Let's blow everyone up. Bang, 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 bang.
Silence, barked Miss Tibbs.
Then suddenly the voice of astronaut Shuckworth cut in urgently on the radio loudspeaker in the president's study.
They've linked up and gone on board, shouted Shuckworth, and they've taken in the bed, I mean the bomb.
The president sucked in his breath sharply.
Stay well clear of them, Shuckworth, ordered the president. There's no point in getting your boys blown up as well.
And now, all over the world, the millions of watchers waited more tensely than ever in front of their television sets. The picture on their screens, in vivid colour, showed the sinister little glass box securely linked up to the underbelly of the gigantic space hotel. And when the camera zoomed closer, it was clear for all to see that the glass box was completely empty. There was no floating inside the space hotel. The gravity-making machine saw to that. So once the docking had been triumphantly achieved, Mr Wonka, Charlie, Grandpa Joe, and Mr and Mrs Bucket were able to walk out of the great glass elevator into the lobby of the hotel. As for Grandpa George, Grandma Georgina, and Grandma Josephine, none of them had had their feet on the ground for over 20 years, and they certainly weren't going to change their habits now. So when the floating stopped, they all three plopped right back into bed again and insisted that the bed, with them in it, be pushed into the space hotel. Charlie gazed around the huge lobby. On the floor there was a thick green carpet. 20 tremendous chandeliers hung shimmering from the ceiling. The walls were covered with valuable pictures, and there were big soft armchairs all over the place. At the far end of the room there were the doors of 5 lifts. The group stared in silence at all this luxury. Nobody dared speak. Mr Wonka had warned them that every word they uttered would be picked up by space control in Houston, so they'd better be careful. A faint humming noise came from somewhere below the floor, but that only made the silence more spooky. Charlie took hold of Grandpa Joe's hand and held it tight. He wasn't sure he liked this very much. They had broken into the greatest machine ever built by man, the property of the United States government, and if they were discovered and captured, as surely they must be in the end, what would happen to them then? Jail for life? Yes, or something worse. Mr Wonka was writing on a little pad. It said, "Anybody hungry?" The 3 old ones in the bed began waving their arms and nodding and opening and shutting their mouths. Mr Wonka turned the paper over. On the other side it said, "The kitchens of this hotel are loaded with luscious food. Lobsters, steaks, ice cream. We shall have a feast to end all feasts." Suddenly, a tremendous booming voice came out of a loudspeaker hidden somewhere in the room.
"Attention!"
boomed the voice, and Charlie jumped. Everybody jumped, even Mr Wonka.
"Attention, the 8 foreign astronauts. This is Space Control in Houston, Texas, USA. You are trespassing on American property. You are ordered to identify yourselves immediately. Speak now."
"Shh," whispered Mr Wonka. There followed a few seconds of awful silence.
"Who are you?" boomed the voice from Houston. "I repeat, who are you?" shouted the urgent, angry voice, and 500 million people crouched in front of their television sets, waiting for an answer. The television was not able to show a picture of these mysterious strangers. There was no camera in there to record the scene. Only the words came through. The TV watchers saw nothing but the outside of the giant hotel in orbit, photographed, of course, by Shuckworth, Shanks and Showler, who were following behind. For half a minute the world waited for a reply, but no reply came. "Speak!" boomed the voice, getting louder and louder. "Speak! Speak! Speak!"
Grandma Georgina shot under the sheet. Grandma Josephine stuck her fingers in her ears. Charlie was clutching Grandpa Joe's hand, and the 2 of them were staring at Mr Wonka and begging him with their eyes to do something. Mr Wonka stood very still.
"This is your last chance," boomed the voice. "We are asking you once more. Who are you? Reply immediately.
If you do not reply, we shall be forced to regard you as dangerous enemies. We shall then press the emergency freezer switch, and the temperature in the space hotel will drop to minus 100 degrees centigrade. All of you will be instantly deep frozen. You have 15 seconds to speak. 1, 2, 3.
Grandpa, whispered Charlie as the counting continued, we must do something.
6, 7, 8, 9.
Mr. Wonka had not moved. Charlie and Grandpa Joe were staring at him in horror. Then all at once they saw the tiny twinkling wrinkles of a smile appear round the corners of his eyes. He sprang to life. He spun round on his toes, skipped a few paces across the floor, and then, in a frenzied, unearthly sort of scream, he cried, "Fimbo Fees!" The loudspeaker stopped counting. There was silence. All over the world there was silence. Charlie's eyes were riveted on Mr. Wonka. He was going to speak again. He was taking a deep breath.
"Bungo Booney!"
he screamed. He put so much force into his voice that the effort lifted him right onto the tips of his toes.
"Bungo Booney! Daffo Dooney! You be loony!"
Again the silence. The next time Mr. Wonka spoke, the words came out so fast and sharp and loud, they were like bullets from a machine gun. "Zong, zong, 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 zong!" he barked. Mr. Wonka now turned and faced the far end of the lobby where the loudspeaker voice had come from. He walked a few paces forward as a man would, perhaps, who wanted a more intimate conversation with his audience. And this time the tone was much quieter. The words came more slowly, but there was a touch of steel in every syllable.
"Kirasuku Malebuku. We be wise and you be cuckoo. Alipenda kakamenda. Pants fall done if no suspender. Fui kika kandarika. We be stronger, you be weaker. Popokota boromoka. Very risky, you provoker. Catty, moons and stars, Fanfanisha, Venus, Mars.
Mr. Wonka paused dramatically for a few seconds. Then he took an enormous deep breath, and in a wild and fearsome voice he yelled out,
"Kitimbibi zunk, Fumbolizi zunk, Gugu Miza zunk, Fumikaka zunk, Anapolala zunk zunk zunk."
The effect of all this on the world below was electric. In the control room in Houston, in the White House in Washington, in palaces and city buildings and mountain shacks from America to China to Peru, the 500 million people who heard that wild and fearsome voice yelling out these strange and mystic words all shivered with fear before their television sets. Everyone began turning to everybody else and saying, "Who are they? What language was that? Where do they come from?" In the President's study in the White House, Vice President Tibbs, the members of the Cabinet, the chiefs of the Army and the Navy and the Air Force, the sword swallower from Afghanistan, the chief financial adviser, and Mrs. Towsy-Puss the cat, all stood tense and rigid. They were very much afraid. But the President himself kept a cool head and a clear brain.
"Nanny," he cried. "Oh, Nanny, what on earth do we do now?"
"I'll get you a nice warm glass of milk," said Miss Tibbs.
"I hate this stuff. Please don't make me drink it."
"Summon the chief interpreter," said Miss Tibbs.
"Summon the chief interpreter," said the President. "Where is he?"
"Right here, Mr. President," said the chief interpreter.
"What language was that creature spouting up there in the Space Hotel? Be quick. Was it Eskimo?"
"Not Eskimo, Mr. President."
"Was it Tulu, then? Or Tungus? Or Tupi?"
"Definitely not Tulu, Mr. President, and I'm quite sure it wasn't Tungus or Tupi." "Well, don't stand there telling them what it wasn't, you idiot," said Miss Tibbs. "Tell them what it was." "Yes, Mom, Miss Vice President, Mom," said the chief interpreter, beginning to shake. "Believe me, Mr. President, it was not a language I've ever heard before."
But I thought you knew every language in the world.
I do, Mr. President.
Don't lie to me, Chief Interpreter. How can you possibly know every language in the world when you don't know this one?
It's not a language of this world, Mr. President. Those people have obviously tried to learn just a few of our easier words, but the rest of it is a language that has never been heard before on this earth.
Screaming scorpions, cried the President. You mean to tell me they could be coming from somewhere else?
Precisely, Mr. President.
Like where? Said the President.
Who knows, said the Chief Interpreter. But did you notice, Mr. President, how they used the words Venus and Mars?
Of course I noticed it, said the President. But what's that got to do with it? Aha! I see what you're driving at. Good gracious me, men from Mars.
And Venus, said the Chief Interpreter.
That, said the President, could make for trouble. What do we do now, General? Blow 'em up. You're always wanting to blow things up. Can't you think of something else?
I like blowing things up, said the General. It makes such a lovely noise. Whoomph, whoomph.
Don't be a fool, said Miss Tibbs. If you blow these people up, Mars will declare war on us. So will Venus. Quite right, Nanny, said the President.
I'll take 'em on, shouted the Chief of the Army.
Shut up, snapped Miss Tibbs. You're fired.
Hooray, said all the other generals.
Well done, Miss Vice President, ma'am. Miss Tibbs said, We to treat these fellas gently. The one who spoke just now sounded extremely cross. You gotta talk to them, Mr. President.
The President of the United States will now address you, announced the loudspeaker voice in the lobby of the Space Hotel.
Grandma Georgina's head peeped cautiously out from under the sheets. You mean he's actually going to speak to us? Whispered Charlie. Shh, said Mr. Wonka.
Dear friends, said the well-known presidential voice over the loudspeaker. Dear, dear friends, welcome to Space Hotel USA. Greetings to the brave astronauts from Mars and Venus.
Mars and Venus, whispered Charlie. You mean he thinks we're from... Shh, said Mr. Wonka. He was doubled up with silent laughter, shaking all over and hopping from one foot to another.
You have come a long way, the President continued. So why don't you come just a tiny bit farther and pay us a visit down here on our humble little Earth? I invite all 8 of you to stay here with me in Washington as my honored guests. We shall have the red carpet out and ready. I do hope you know enough of our language to understand me. I shall wait most anxiously for your reply.
There was a click, and the President went off the air. What a fantastic thing, whispered Grandpa Joe. The White House, Charlie. We're invited to the White House as honored guests. Charlie caught hold of Grandpa Joe's hands, and the two of them started dancing round and round the lobby of the hotel. Mr. Wonka, still shaking with laughter, went and sat down on the bed and signalled everyone to gather round close so they could whisper without being heard by the hidden microphones. They're scared to death, he whispered. They won't bother us any more. So let's have that feast we were talking about, and afterwards we can explore the hotel. Aren't we going to the White House? Whispered Grandma Josephine. I want to go to the White House and stay with the President. My dear old Dotty Dumpling, said Mr. Wonka, you look as much like a man from Mars as a bedbug. They'd know at once they'd been fooled. We'd be arrested before we could say how do you do. Mr. Wonka was right. There could be no question of accepting the President's invitation, and they all knew it. But we've got to say something to him, Charlie whispered. He must be sitting down there in the White House this very minute, waiting for an answer. You're right, whispered Mr. Wonka. It is rude to ignore an invitation. He stood up and walked a few paces from the group. For a moment or two he remained quite still, gathering his thoughts. Then once again Charlie saw those tiny twinkling smiling wrinkles around the corners of his eyes, and when he began to speak, his voice this time was like the voice of a giant, deep and devilish, very loud and very slow.
In the Quelshi Quaggy Sogmire, in the mashy Midius harshland, at the witchy hour of gloomness, all the grobes come oozing home. You can hear them softly sliming, glissing, hissing o'er the slubber, all those oily, boily bodies oozing onward in the gloam. So start to run, O skid and daddle, through the slubber, slush and sossle. Skip, jump, hop, and try to scaddle, all the grobes are on the roam.
In his study 240,000 miles below, the President turned white as the White House.
"Jumpin' jackrabbits," he cried. "I think they're after us."
"Oh, please, let me blow 'em up,"
said the ex-chief of the army.
"Silence," said Miss Tibbs. "Go stand in the corner."
In the lobby of the Space Hotel, Mr. Wonka had merely paused in order to think up another verse, and he was just about to start off again when a frightful, piercing scream stopped him cold. The screamer was Grandma Josephine. She was sitting up in bed and pointing with a shaking finger at the lifts at the far end of the lobby. The door of the one on the left was sliding slowly open, and the watchers could clearly see that there was something thick, something brown, something not exactly brown, but greenish-brown, something with slimy skin and large eyes, squatting inside the lift. Charlie and Grandpa Joe became as still as stone. They dared not move. They dared hardly breathe. And Mr. Wonka, who had swung quickly around to look when the first scream came, was as dumbstruck as the rest. He stood motionless, gaping at the thing in the lift. What he saw, what they all saw, was this. It looked more than anything like an enormous egg balanced on its pointed end. It was as tall as a big boy and wider than the fattest man. The greenish-brown skin had a shiny, wettish appearance, and there were wrinkles in it. About 3/4 of the way up, in the widest part, there were 2 large, round eyes, as big as teacups. The eyes were white, but each had a brilliant red pupil in the centre. The red pupils were resting on Mr. Wonka. But now they began travelling slowly across to Charlie and Grandpa Joe and the others by the bed, settling upon them and gazing at them with a cold, malevolent stare. The eyes were everything. There were no other features, no nose or mouth or ears, but the entire egg-shaped body was itself moving very, very slightly, pulsing and bulging gently here and there, as though the skin were filled with some thick fluid. At this point, Charlie suddenly noticed that the next lift was coming down. The indicator numbers above the door were flashing. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, L for lobby. There was a slight pause. The door slid open, and there, inside the second lift, was another enormous, slimy, wrinkled, greenish-brownish egg with eyes. Now the numbers were flashing above all 3 of the remaining lifts. Down they came, down, 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 and soon, at precisely the same time, they reached the lobby floor, and the doors slid open. 5 open doors now, 1 creature in each, 5 in all, and 5 pairs of eyes with brilliant red centres, all watching Mr. Wonka, and watching Charlie and Grandpa Joe and the others. There were slight differences in size and shape between the 5, but all had the same greenish-brown wrinkled skin, and the skin was rippling and pulsing. For about 30 seconds nothing happened. Nobody stirred, nobody made a sound. Charlie was so frightened he felt himself shrinking inside his skin. Then he saw the creature in the left-hand lift suddenly starting to change shape. Its body was slowly becoming longer and longer and thinner, going up and up towards the roof of the lift, not straight up, but curving a little to the left, making a snake-like curve that was curiously graceful, up to the left and then curling over the top to the right and coming down again in a half-circle. And then the bottom end began to grow out as well, like a tail creeping along the floor to the left, until at last the creature, which had originally looked like a huge egg, now looked like a long, curvy serpent standing on its tail. Then the one in the next lift began stretching itself in much the same way, and what a weird and oozy thing it was to watch. It was twisting itself into a shape that was a bit different from the first, balancing itself almost but not quite on the tip of its tail. Then the 3 remaining creatures began stretching themselves all at the same time, each one elongating itself slowly upward, growing taller and taller, thinner and thinner, curving and twisting, stretching and curling and bending. When they had all stopped stretching and bending, it became clear to Charlie that they had all become a different letter of the alphabet. The first was an S, the second a C, then an R and A and an M. They spelt a word, and Charlie was just working out what it was when Mr. Wonka shouted, "Scram! It spells scram! Get out quick!" People have never moved faster than Grandpa Joe and Charlie and Mr. and Mrs. Bucket at that moment. They all got behind the bed and started pushing like crazy. Mr. Wonka ran in front of them shouting, "Scram! Scram! Scram!" And in 10 seconds flat, all of them were out of the lobby and back inside the great glass elevator. Frantically, Mr. Wonka began undoing bolts and pressing buttons. The door of the great glass elevator snapped shut, and the whole thing leapt sideways. They were away, and of course all of them, including the 3 old ones in bed, floated up again into the air. "Oh, my goodness me!" gasped Mr. Wonka. "Oh, my sainted pants! Oh, my painted ants! Oh, my crawling cats! I hope I never see anything like that again." He floated over to the white button and pressed it. The booster rockets fired. The elevator shot forward at such a speed that soon the Space Hotel was out of sight far behind. "But who were those awful creatures?" Charlie asked. "You mean you didn't know?" cried Mr. Wonka. "Well, it's a good thing you didn't. If you'd had even the faintest idea of what horrors you were up against, the marrow would have run out of your bones. You'd have been fossilized with fear and glued to the ground. Then they'd have got you. You'd have been a cooked cucumber. You'd have been rasped into 1,000 tiny bits, grated like cheese and flocculated alive, because those creatures, my dear ignorant boy, are the most brutal, vindictive, venomous, murderous beasts in the entire universe." Here Mr. Wonka paused and ran the tip of a pink tongue all the way round his lips. "Vermicious canids," he cried. "That's what they were." "I thought they were grobes," Charlie said. "Those oozy-woozy grobes you were telling the President about." "Oh, no, I just made those up to scare the White House," Mr. Wonka answered. "But there is nothing made up about vermicious canids, believe you me. They live, as everybody knows, on the planet Vermes, which is 18,427 million miles away, and they are very, very clever brutes indeed. The vermicious canid can turn itself into any shape it wants. It has no bones. Its body is really one huge muscle, enormously strong, but very stretchy and squishy. Normally it is egg-shaped, but it can just as easily give itself 2 legs like a human or 4 legs like a horse. From 50 yards away, a fully grown vermicious canid could stretch its neck and bite your head off without even getting up." "Bite off your head with what?" said Grandma Georgina. "I didn't see any mouth." "They have other things to bite with," said Mr. Wonka darkly. "Such as what?" said Grandma Georgina. "Ring off," said Mr. Wonka. "Your time's up." "But listen, everybody, I've just had a funny thought. There I was, fooling around with the President and pretending we were creatures from some other planet, and by golly, there actually were creatures from some other planet on board." "Do you think there were many?" Charlie asked. "More than the 5 we saw?" "Thousands," said Mr. Wonka. "There are 500 rooms in that Space Hotel, and there's probably a family of them in every room." "Somebody's going to get a nasty shock when they go on board," said Grandpa Joe. "They'll be eaten like peanuts," said Mr. Wonka. "Every one of them." "You don't really mean that, do you, Mr Wonka?" Charlie said.
Of course I mean it. Those vermicious canids are the terror of the universe. They travel through space in great swarms, landing on other stars and planets and destroying everything they find. There used to be some rather nice creatures living on the moon a long time ago. They were called poozers, but the vermicious canids ate the lot.
"Why haven't they come down to Earth and eaten us?" Charlie asked.
They've tried to, Charlie, many times, but they've never made it. You see, all around our Earth there is a vast envelope of air and gas, and anything hitting that at high speed gets red hot. Space capsules are made of special heat-proof metal, and when they make a re-entry, their speeds are reduced right down to about 2,000 miles an hour, first by retro-rockets and then by something called friction. But even so, they get badly scorched. Canids, which are not heat-proof at all and don't have any retro-rockets, get sizzled up completely before they're halfway through. Have you ever seen a shooting star?
"Lots of them," said Charlie.
Actually, they're not shooting stars at all, said Mr Wonka. They're shooting canids. They're canids trying to enter the Earth's atmosphere at high speed and going up in flames.
"What rubbish," said Grandma Georgina. "But if they're so fierce and dangerous," Charlie said, "why didn't they eat us up right away in the Space Hotel? Why did they waste time twisting their bodies into letters and writing scram?"
"Because they're show-offs," Mr Wonka replied. "They're tremendously proud of being able to write like that."
"But why say scram when they wanted to catch us and eat us?"
"It's the only word they know," Mr Wonka said.
"Look!" screamed Grandma Josephine, pointing through the glass. "Over there!"
Before he even looked, Charlie knew exactly what he was going to see. So did the others. They could tell by the high hysterical note in the old lady's voice. And there it was, cruising alongside them, a simply colossal vermicious canid, as thick as a whale, as long as a lorry, with the most brutal vermicious look in its eye. It was no more than a dozen yards away, egg-shaped, slimy, greenish-brown, with one malevolent red eye, the only one visible, fixed intently upon the people floating inside the great glass elevator.
"The end has come!" screamed Grandma Georgina.
"He'll eat us all!" cried Mrs. Bucket.
"In one gulp," said Mr. Bucket.
"We're done for, Charlie," said Grandpa Joe.
Charlie nodded. His throat was seized up with fright.
But this time Mr. Wonka didn't panic. He remained perfectly calm. "We'll soon get rid of that," he said, and he pressed 6 buttons all at once, and 6 booster rockets went off simultaneously under the elevator. The elevator leapt forward like a stung horse, but the great green greasy canid kept pace alongside it with no trouble at all.
"Make it go away!"
yelled Grandma Georgina. "Dear lady," said Mr. Wonka, "it can't possibly get in here. I don't mind admitting I was a trifle alarmed back there in the Space Hotel, but here we have nothing to fear, so just relax and enjoy it." "Oh, you canid, you are vile and vermicious," cried Mr. Wonka. "You are slimy and soggy and squishous. But what do we care, 'cause you can't get in here, so hop it and don't get ambitious." At this point, the massive canid outside turned and started cruising away from the elevator. "There you are!" cried Mr. Wonka, triumphant. "It heard me. It's going home." But Mr. Wonka was wrong. When the creature was about 100 yards off, it stopped, hovered for a moment, then went smoothly into reverse, coming back toward the elevator with its rear end, which was the pointed end of the egg, now in front. Even going backwards, its acceleration was unbelievable. It was like some monstrous bullet coming at them, and it came so fast nobody had time even to cry out. Crash! It struck the glass elevator with the most enormous bang, and the whole thing shivered and shook, but the glass held, and the canid bounced off like a rubber ball. "What did I tell you?" shouted Mr. Wonka. "We're as safe as sausages in here."
"He'll have a nasty headache after that," said Grandpa Joe.
"It's not his head, it's his bottom," said Charlie. "Look, there's a big bump coming up on the pointed end where it hit. It's going black and blue." And so it was. A purple bruisey bump the size of a small car was appearing on the pointed rear end of the giant canid. "Hello, you dirty great beast!" cried Mr. Wonka. "Hello, you great canid, tell us how do you do? You're a rather strange colour today. Your bottom is purple and lavender blue. Should it really be looking that way?
Are you not feeling well? Are you going to faint? Is it something we cannot discuss? It must be a very unpleasant complaint, for your backside's as big as a bus. Let me get you a doctor. I know just the man for a cnid with a nasty disease. He's a butcher by trade, which is not a bad plan, and he charges quite reasonable fees. Ah, here he is now. Doc, you really are kind to travel so far into space. There's your patient, the cnid with the purple behind. Do you think it's a desperate case? Great heavens above, no wonder he's pale, said the doc with a horrible grin. There's a sort of balloon on the end of his tail. I must prick it at once with a pin. So he got out a thing like an Indian spear, with feathers all over the top, and he lunged and he caught the cnid smack in the rear. But alas, the balloon didn't pop. Cried the cnid, what on earth am I going to do with this painful, preposterous lump? I can't remain standing the whole summer through, and I cannot sit down on my rump. It's a bad case of rear ache, the medico said, and it's something I cannot repair. If you want to sit down, you must sit on your head, with your bottom high up in the air. Side 2. On the day when all this was happening, no factories opened anywhere in the world. All offices and schools were closed. Nobody moved away from the television screens. The tension was unbearable. Everybody heard the American president's invitation to the men from Mars to visit him in the White House, and they heard the weird rhyming reply, which sounded rather threatening. They also heard a piercing scream, Grandma Josephine, and a little later on they heard someone shouting, "Scram, scram, scram, Mr Wonka." Nobody could make head or tail of the shouting. But when the 8 mysterious astronauts suddenly rushed back into their glass capsule and broke away from the space hotel, you could almost hear the great sigh of relief that rose up from the peoples of the earth. The president himself remained calm and thoughtful.
Do you think the men from Mars have accepted my invitation to the White House?
Of course they have, said the Foreign Secretary. It was a brilliant speech. They're probably on their way down here right now, said Miss Tibbs. Go and wash that nasty, sticky chewing gum off your fingers quickly. They could be here any minute.
Let's have a song first, said the president. Sing another one about me, Nanny. Please.
This mighty man of whom I sing, this greatest of them all, was once a teeny little thing, just 18 inches tall. I knew him as a tiny tot. I nursed him on my knee. I used to sit him on the pot and wait for him to wee. Through happy childhood days he strayed, as all nice children should. I smacked him when he disobeyed and stopped when he was good. It soon began to dawn on me he wasn't very bright, because when he was 23 he couldn't read or write. What shall we do, his parents sobbed. The boy has got the vapors. He couldn't even get a job delivering the papers. Aha, I said, this little cloth could be a politician. Nanny, he cried, oh, Nanny, what a super proposition. Okay, I said, let's learn and note the art of politics. Let's teach you how to miss the boat and how to drop some bricks, and how to win the people's vote, and lots of other tricks. And now that I am 89, it's too late to repent. The fault was mine, the little swine became the president.
Bravo, Nanny, cried the president.
Hooray, shouted the others. Well done, Miss Vice President, Mom. Brilliant, tremendous.
My goodness, said the president. Those men from Mars will be here any moment. What on earth are we going to give them for lunch? Where's my chief cook?
The chief cook was a Frenchman. He was also a French spy, and at this moment he was listening at the keyhole. Ici, Monsieur le Président, he said, bursting in.
Chief cook, said the president, what do men from Mars eat for lunch?
Mars bars, said the chief cook.
Baked or boiled? Asked the president.
Oh, baked, of course, Monsieur le Président. You will ruin a Mars bar by boiling. The voice of astronaut Shuckworth cut in over the loudspeaker in the president's study. Request permission to link up and go aboard Space Hotel, he said.
Permission granted, said the President. Go right ahead, Shuckworth. It's all clear now, thanks to me.
And so the large transport capsule, piloted by Shuckworth, Shanks and Showler, with all the hotel managers and assistant managers and hall porters and pastry chefs and bellboys and waitresses and chambermaids on board, moved in smoothly and linked up with the giant space hotel.
Hey there, we've lost our television picture, called the President.
I'm afraid the camera got smashed against the side of the space hotel, Mr. President, Shuckworth replied. The President said a very rude word into the microphone, and 10 million children across the nation began repeating it gleefully and got smacked by their parents. All astronauts and 150 hotel staff safely aboard Space Hotel, Shuckworth reported over the radio. We are now standing in the lobby.
And what do you think of it all?
Asked the President. He knew the whole world was listening in, and he wanted Shuckworth to say how wonderful it was. Shuckworth didn't let him down. Gee, Mr. President, it's just great, he said. It's unbelievable. It's so enormous. And so, it's kind of hard to find words to describe it. It's so truly grand, especially the chandeliers and the carpets and all. I have the chief hotel manager, Mr. Walter W. Wall, beside me now. He would like the honor of a word with you, sir.
Put him on, said the President.
Mr. President, sir, this is Walter Wall. What a sumptuous hotel this is. The decorations are superb.
Have you noticed that all the carpets are wall to wall, Mr. Wall to Wall? Said the President.
I have indeed, Mr. President.
And all the wallpaper is all wall to wall too, Mr. Wall to Wall?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. Isn't that something? Hey, what's going on over there? Something's coming out of the lifts. Help! Suddenly the loudspeaker in the President's study gave out a series of the most ghastly screams and yells. Ah! Ow! Ah! Help! Help! Help!
What on earth's going on? Said the President. Shuckworth, are you there? Mr. Wall to Wall? Where are you all? What's happening?
The screams continued. They were so loud the President had to put his fingers in his ears. Every house in the world heard those awful screams. There were other noises too, loud grunts and snortings and crunching sounds. Then there was silence. Frantically, the President called the Space Hotel on the radio. Houston called the Space Hotel. The President called Houston. Houston called the President. Then both of them called the Space Hotel again. But answer came there none. Up there in space, all was silent.
Something nasty's happened, said the President.
It's those men from Mars, said the ex-chief of the army. I told you to let me blow 'em up.
Silence, snapped the President. I've got to think.
The loudspeaker began to crackle. Hello, it said. Hello, hello, hello. Are you receiving me, Space Control in Houston? The President grabbed the mic on his desk.
Leave this to me, Houston, he shouted. President Gilligrass here receiving you loud and clear. Go ahead.
Astronaut Shuckworth here, Mr. President. Back aboard the transport capsule. Thank heavens.
What happened, Shuckworth? Who's with you?
We're most of us here, Mr. President, I'm glad to say. Shanks and Showler are with me and a whole bunch of other folks. I guess we lost maybe a couple of dozen people altogether. Pastry chefs, hall porters, that sort of thing.
What do you mean you lost 24 people? Shouted the President. How did you lose 'em?
Gobbled up, replied Shuckworth. One gulp and that was it. No chewing, nothing. Just down the hatch.
But who? Yelled the President. Who are you talking about? Who did the swallowing?
Hold it, cried Shuckworth. Oh, my Lord, here they all come now. They're coming after us. They're swarming out of the Space Hotel. They're coming out in swarms. You'll have to excuse me a moment, Mr. President. No time to talk right now. While Shuckworth, Shanks and Showler were being chased out of the Space Hotel by the Canids, Mr. Wonka's great glass elevator was orbiting the Earth at tremendous speed. Mr. Wonka had all his booster rockets firing, and the elevator was reaching speeds of 34,000 miles an hour instead of the normal 17,000. They were trying, you see, to get away from that great, angry, vermicious Canid with the purple behind. Mr. Wonka wasn't afraid of it.
But Grandma Josephine was petrified. But of course 34,000 miles an hour is dawdling to a Canid. Healthy young Canids think nothing of travelling 1,000,000 miles between lunch and supper, and then another 1,000,000 before breakfast the next day. How else could they travel between the planet Vermes and other stars? Mr. Wonka should have known this and saved his rocket power, but he kept right on going, and the giant Canid kept right on cruising alongside, glaring into the elevator with its wicked red eye. "You people have bruised my backside," the Canid seemed to be saying, "and in the end I'm going to get you for that." They'd been streaking around the earth like this for about 45 minutes when Charlie, who was floating comfortably beside Grandpa Joe near the ceiling, said suddenly, "There's something ahead. Can you see it, Grandpa? Straight in front of us." "I can, Charlie." "Good heavens, it's the Space Hotel." "It can't be, Grandpa. We left it miles behind long ago." "Aha," said Mr. Wonka. "We've been going so fast we've gone all the way around the earth and caught up with it again." "And there's the transport capsule. Can you see it, Grandpa? It's just behind the Space Hotel." "There's something else there too, Charlie, if I'm not mistaken." "I know what those are," screamed Grandma Josephine. "They're Vermicious Canids." "Reverse," yelled Grandma Georgina. "Go the other way." "Dear lady," said Mr. Wonka, "this isn't a car on the motorway. When you're in orbit, you cannot stop and you cannot go backwards." "I don't care about that," shouted Grandma Josephine. "Put on the brakes. The Canids'll get us." "Now let's for heaven's sake stop this nonsense once and for all," Mr. Wonka said sternly. "You know very well my elevator is completely Canid-proof." Charlie and Mr Wonka, as cool as 2 cubes of ice, were up near the ceiling working the booster rocket controls, and Grandpa Joe, shouting war cries and throwing curses at the canids, was down below turning the handle that unwound the steel rope. At the same time, he was watching the rope through the glass floor of the elevator.
"Starboard a bit, Charlie," shouted Grandpa Joe. "We're right on top of her now. Forward a couple of yards, Mr Wonka. I'm trying to get the hook hooked around that stumpy thing sticking out in front there. Hold it. I've got it. That's it. Forward a little now and see if it holds. More. More."
The big steel rope tightened. It held. And now, wonder of wonders, with her booster rockets blazing, the elevator began to tow the huge transport capsule forward and away.
"Full speed ahead," shouted Grandpa Joe. "She's going to hold. She's holding. She's holding fine."
"All boosters firing," cried Mr Wonka, and the elevator leapt ahead. Still the rope held. Mr Wonka jetted himself down to Grandpa Joe and shook him warmly by the hand. "Well done, sir," he said. "You did a brilliant job under heavy fire." Charlie looked back at the transport capsule some 30 yards behind them on the end of the tow line. It had little windows up front, and in the windows he could clearly see the flabbergasted faces of Shuckworth, Shanks and Showler. Charlie waved to them, and he gave them the thumbs-up signal. They didn't wave back. They simply gaped. Grandpa Joe blew himself upward and hovered beside Charlie, bubbling with excitement.
"Charlie, me boy," he said, "we've been through a few funny things together lately, but never anything like this."
"Grandpa, where are the canids? They've suddenly vanished." Everyone looked round. The only canid in sight was their old friend with the purple behind, still cruising alongside in his usual place, still glaring into the elevator.
"Just a minute," cried Grandma Josephine. "What's that I see over there?"
Again they looked, and this time, sure enough, away in the distance, in the deep blue sky of outer space, they saw a massive cloud of vermicious canids wheeling and circling like a fleet of bombers.
"If you think you're out of the woods yet, you're crazy," shouted Grandma Georgina.
"I fear no canids," said Mr Wonka.
"We've got them beaten now."
"Puppy rot and pigwash," said Grandma Josephine.
"Look at them. They're coming in. They're coming closer."
This was true. The huge fleet of canids had moved in at incredible speed and was now flying level with the great glass elevator. A couple of 100 yards away on the right, Charlie and Mr Wonka, as cool as 2 cubes of ice, were up near the ceiling working the booster rocket controls, and Grandpa Joe, shouting war cries and throwing curses at the canids, was down below turning the handle that unwound the steel rope. At the same time, he was watching the rope through the glass floor of the elevator.
"Starboard a bit, Charlie," shouted Grandpa Joe. "We're right on top of her now. Forward a couple of yards, Mr Wonka. I'm trying to get the hook hooked around that stumpy thing sticking out in front there. Hold it. I've got it. That's it. Forward a little now and see if it holds. More. More."
The big steel rope tightened. It held. And now, wonder of wonders, with her booster rockets blazing, the elevator began to tow the huge transport capsule forward and away.
"Full speed ahead," shouted Grandpa Joe. "She's going to hold. She's holding. She's holding fine."
"All boosters firing," cried Mr Wonka, and the elevator leapt ahead. Still the rope held. Mr Wonka jetted himself down to Grandpa Joe and shook him warmly by the hand. "Well done, sir," he said. "You did a brilliant job under heavy fire." Charlie looked back at the transport capsule some 30 yards behind them on the end of the tow line. It had little windows up front, and in the windows he could clearly see the flabbergasted faces of Shuckworth, Shanks and Showler. Charlie waved to them, and he gave them the thumbs-up signal. They didn't wave back. They simply gaped. Grandpa Joe blew himself upward and hovered beside Charlie, bubbling with excitement.
"Charlie, me boy," he said, "we've been through a few funny things together lately, but never anything like this."
"Grandpa, where are the canids? They've suddenly vanished." Everyone looked round. The only Kinid in sight was their old friend with the purple behind, still cruising alongside in his usual place, still glaring into the elevator. "Just a minute," cried Grandma Josephine. "What's that I see over there?" In a few seconds more, the canids had blown away in a cloud of ashes, and it was all over. "We've done it!" cried Mr Wonka. "They've been roasted to a crisp. They've been frizzled to a fritter. We're saved!" "What do you mean, saved?" said Grandma Josephine. "We'll all be frizzled ourselves if this goes on much longer. We'll be barbecued like beefsteaks. Look at that glass. It's hotter than a fizz-gig." "Have no fears, dear lady," answered Mr Wonka. "My elevator is air-conditioned, ventilated, aerated, and automated in every possible way. We're going to be all right now." "I haven't the faintest idea what's been going on," said Mrs Bucket, making one of her rare speeches. "But whatever it is, I don't like it." "What a great sight this is," said Mr Wonka. "Just look at the earth down there, Charlie, getting bigger and bigger." "And us going to meet it at 2,000 miles an hour," groaned Grandma Georgina. "How are you going to slow down, for heaven's sake? You didn't think of that, did you?" "He's got parachutes," Charlie told her. "I bet he's got great big parachutes that open just before we hit." "Parachutes?" said Mr Wonka with contempt. "Parachutes are only for astronauts and sissies. And anyway, we don't want to slow down. We want to speed up. I've told you already we've got to be going at an absolutely tremendous speed when we hit. Otherwise we'll never punch our way in through the roof of the chocolate factory." "How about the transport capsule?" Charlie asked anxiously. "We'll be letting them go in a few seconds now," Mr Wonka answered. "They do have parachutes, 3 of them, to slow them down on the last bit." "How do you know we won't land in the Pacific Ocean?" said Grandma Josephine. "I don't," said Mr Wonka. "But we all know how to swim, do we not?" "This man," shouted Grandma Josephine, "is crazy as a crumpet." Down and down plunged the great glass elevator. Nearer and nearer came the earth below. Oceans and continents rushed up to meet them, getting bigger every second. "Grandpa Joe, sir, throw out the rope. Let it go," ordered Mr Wonka. "They'll be all right now, so long as their parachutes are working." "Rope gone," called out Grandpa Joe, and the huge transport capsule, on its own now, began to swing away to one side. Charlie waved to the 3 astronauts in the front window. None of them waved back. They were still sitting there in a kind of shocked daze, gaping at the old ladies and the old men and the small boy floating about in the glass elevator. "It won't be long now," said Mr Wonka, reaching for a row of tiny pale blue buttons in one corner. "We shall soon know whether we are alive or dead. Keep very quiet, please, for this final bit. I have to concentrate awfully hard." They plunged into a thick bank of cloud, and for 10 seconds they could see nothing. When they came out of the cloud, the transport capsule had disappeared, and the earth was very close, and there was only a great spread of land beneath them with mountains and forests, then fields and trees, then a small town. "There it is," shouted Mr Wonka. "My chocolate factory, my beloved chocolate factory." "You mean Charlie's chocolate factory," said Grandpa Joe. "That's right," said Mr Wonka, addressing Charlie. "I'd clean forgotten. I do apologise to you, my dear boy. Of course it's yours. And here we go." Through the glass floor of the elevator, Charlie caught a quick glimpse of the huge red roof and the tall chimneys of the giant factory. They were plunging straight down onto it. "Hold your breath," shouted Mr Wonka. "Hold your nose, fasten your seat belts and say your prayers. We're going through the roof." Crash! And then the noise of splintering wood and broken glass and absolute darkness and the most awful crunching sounds as the elevator rushed on, smashing everything before it. All at once, the crushing noises stopped, and the ride became smoother, and the elevator seemed to be travelling on guides or rails, twisting and turning like a roller coaster. And when the lights came on, Charlie suddenly realised that for the last few seconds he hadn't been floating at all. He'd been standing normally on the floor. Mr Wonka was on the floor too, and so was Grandpa Joe, and Mr and Mrs Bucket, and also the big bed. As for Grandma Josephine, Grandma Georgina and Grandpa George, they must have fallen right back onto the bed, because they were now all 3 on top of it and scrabbling to get under the blanket. "We're through!" yelled Mr Wonka. "We've done it! We're in!" Grandpa Joe grabbed him by the hand and said, "Well done, sir! How splendid! What a magnificent job!" "Where in the world are we now?" said Mrs Bucket. "We're back, Mother," Charlie cried. "We're in the chocolate factory." "I'm very glad to hear it," said Mrs Bucket. "But didn't we come rather a long way round?" "We had to," said Mr Wonka, "to avoid the traffic." I have never met a man who talks so much absolute nonsense, said Grandma Georgina. A little nonsense now and then is relished by the wisest men, Mr. Wonka said. Why don't you pay some attention to where this crazy elevator's going, shouted Grandma Josephine, and stop footling about. A little footling about will stop you going up the spout, said Mr. Wonka. What did I tell you? Cried Grandma Georgina. He's round the twist. I want to go home. Too late, said Mr. Wonka. We're there. The elevator stopped. The doors opened, and Charlie found himself looking out once again at the great chocolate room with the chocolate river and the chocolate waterfall. And there to meet them were hundreds and hundreds of tiny Oompa-Loompas, all waving and cheering. Even Grandma Georgina was stunned into silence for a few seconds, but not for long. Who in the world are all those peculiar little men? She said. They're Oompa-Loompas, Charlie told her. They're wonderful. You love them. Shh, said Grandpa Joe. Listen, Charlie. The drums are starting up. They're going to sing. If you are old and have the shakes, if all your bones are full of aches, if you can hardly walk at all, if living drives you up the wall, if you're a grump and full of spite, if you're a human parasite, then what you need is Wonkavite. Your eyes will shine, your hair will grow, your face and skin will start to glow, your rotten teeth will all drop out, and in their place new teeth will sprout. Those rolls of fat around your hips will vanish, and your wrinkled lips will get so soft and rosy pink that all the boys will smile and wink and whisper secretly that this is just the girl they want to kiss. But wait, for that is not the most important thing of which I boast. Good looks you'll have, we've told you so, but looks aren't everything, you know. Each pill as well to you will give an extra 20 years to live. So come, old friends, and do what's right. Let's make your lives as bright as bright. Let's take a dose of this delight, this heavenly magic dynamite. You can't go wrong, you must go right. It's Willy Wonka's Wonkavite. Here it is, cried Mr. Wonka, standing at the end of the bed and holding high in one hand a little bottle. The most valuable bottle of pills in the world. And that, by the way, he said, giving Grandma Georgina a saucy glance, is why I haven't taken any myself. They are far too valuable to waste on me. He held the bottle over the bed. The three old ones sat up and stretched their scrawny necks, trying to catch a glimpse of the pills inside. Charlie and Grandpa Joe also came forward to look. So did Mr. and Mrs. Bucket. The label said, Wonkavite. Each pill will make you younger by exactly 20 years. Caution. Do not take more than the amount recommended by Mr. Wonka. They could all see the pills through the glass. They were brilliant yellow, shimmering and quivering inside the bottle. Vibrating is perhaps a better word. They were vibrating so rapidly that each pill became a blur, and you couldn't see its shape. "They're wriggling," said Grandma Georgina. "I don't like things that wriggle." "If I'm going to eat one of those pills, I jolly well want to know what's in it first," said Grandma Josephine. "I don't blame you," said Mr. Wonka, "but the recipe is extremely complicated. Wait a minute, I've got it written down somewhere." He started digging around in the pockets of his coat-tails. "I know it's here somewhere," he said. "I can't have lost it. Ah, here it is." He unfolded a crumpled piece of paper, smoothed it out, held it up, and began to read as follows. Recipe for making Wonkavite. Take a block of finest chocolate weighing 1 ton, or 20 sackfuls of broken chocolate, whichever is the easier. Place chocolate in very large cauldron and melt over red-hot furnace. When melted, lower the heat slightly so as not to burn the chocolate, but keep it boiling. Now add the following in precisely the order given, stirring well all the time and allowing each item to dissolve before adding the next. The hoof of a manticore, the trunk and the suitcase of an elephant, the yolks of 3 eggs from the wiffle bird, a wart from a warthog, the horn of a cow, it must be a loud horn, the front tail of a cockatrice, 6 ounces of sponge from a young slime scraper, 2 hares and 1 rabbit from the head of a hippocampus, the beak of a red-breasted wilbatross, a corn from the toe of a unicorn, the 4 tentacles of a quadrupus, the hip and the paw and the pot of a hippopotamus, the snout of a proghopper, a mole from a mole, the hide and the seek of a spotted wangdoodle, the whites of 12 eggs from a tree squeak, 3 feet of snozzwanger. If you can't get 3 feet, 1 yard will do. The square root of a South American abacus, the fangs of a viper, it must be a windscreen viper, the chest and the drawers of a wild grout. When all the above are thoroughly dissolved, boil for a further 27 days, but do not stir. At the end of this time, all liquid will have evaporated, and there will be left in the bottom of the cauldron only a hard brown lump about the size of a football. Break this open with a hammer, and in the very centre of it you will find a small round pill. This pill is Wonkavite. When Mr. Wonka had finished reading the recipe, he carefully folded the paper and put it back into his pocket. "A very, very complicated mixture," he said. "So can you wonder it took me so long to get it just right? Now, sir," he said, offering the bottle first to Grandpa George, "will you take 1 pill or 2? "Will you solemnly swear," said Grandpa George, "that it will do what you say it will and nothing else?" Mr. Wonka placed his free hand on his heart. "I swear it," he said. Charlie edged forward. Grandpa Joe came with him. The two of them always stayed close together. "Please excuse me for asking," Charlie said, "but are you really absolutely sure you've got it quite right?"
"Whatever makes you ask a funny question like that?" said Mr. Wonka.
I was thinking of the gum you gave to Violet Beauregard," Charlie said.
"So that's what's bothering you," cried Mr. Wonka. "But don't you understand, me dear boy, that I never did give that gum to Violet? She snatched it without permission, and I shouted, 'Stop, don't spit it out!' But the silly girl took no notice of me. I am offering these pills to your grandparents. I am recommending them."
"Listen," he cried, going up to the edge of the bed. "Mr. Wonka's offering you a new life. Grab it while you can."
Mr. Wonka stepped forward and placed the bottle of pills in the middle of the bed. "So here you are, my dears," he said. "Help yourselves."
"Come on," cried all the Oompa Loompas together. "Come on, old friends, and do what's right. Come and make your lives as bright as bright. Just take a dose of this delight, this heavenly magic dynamite. You can't go wrong, you must go right. It's Willy Wonka's Wonkovite." This was too much for the old people in the bed. All three of them made a dive for the bottle. 6 scrawny hands shot out and started scrabbling to get hold of it. Grandma Georgina got it. She gave a grunt of triumph and unscrewed the cap and tipped all the brilliant yellow pills onto the blanket on her lap. She cupped her hands around them so the others couldn't reach out and snatch them. "All right," she shouted excitedly, counting them quickly. "There's 12 pills here. That's 6 for me and 3 each for you." "Hey, that's not fair," shrilled Grandma Josephine. "It's 4 for each of us." "4 each is right," cried Grandpa George. "Come on, Georgina, hand over my share." Mr. Wonka shrugged his shoulders and turned his back on them. He hated squabbles. He hated it when people got grabby and selfish. He walked slowly down toward the chocolate waterfall. It was an unhappy truth, he told himself, that nearly all people in the world behave badly when there is something really big at stake. Money is the thing they fight over most. But these pills were bigger than money. They could do things for you no amount of money could ever do. They were worth at least $1 million a pill. He knew plenty of very rich men who would gladly pay that much in order to become 20 years younger. He reached the river bank below the waterfall, and he stood there gazing at the great gush and splash of melted chocolate pouring down. He had hoped the noise of the waterfall would drown the arguing voices of the old grandparents in the bed. But it didn't. "I got them first," Grandma Georgina was shouting, "so they're mine to share out." "Oh, no, they're not," shrilled Grandma Josephine. "I want my share and no one's going to stop me getting it," yelled Grandpa George. Then came the voice of Grandpa Joe, cutting in sternly through the rabble. "Stop this at once," he ordered. "All 3 of you, you're behaving like savages." "You keep out of this, Joe, and mind your own business," said Grandma Josephine. "Now you be careful, Josie," Grandpa Joe went on. 4 is too many for one person anyway." "That's right," Charlie said. "Please, Grandma, why don't you just take 1 or 2 each, like Mr. Wonka said, and that'll leave some for Grandpa Joe and Mother and Father." "Yes," cried Mr. Bucket, "I'd love one." "Oh, wouldn't it be wonderful," said Mrs. Bucket, "to be 20 years younger and not have aching feet any more. Couldn't you spare just 1 for each of us, Mother?" "I'm afraid not," said Grandma Georgina. "These pills are specially reserved for us 3 in the bed. Mr. Wonka said so. Here's 4 for Josephine, and 4 for George, and 4 for me." "Good," said Grandpa George. "Now, who's got some water?" Without looking round, Mr. Wonka knew that 3 Oompa Loompas would be running to the bed with 3 glasses of water. Oompa Loompas were always ready to help. "Well, here goes," cried Grandpa George. "Young and beautiful, that's what I'll be," shouted Grandma Josephine. "Farewell, old age," cried Grandma Georgina. "All together now, down of the hatch." Then there was silence. Mr. Wonka was itching to turn round and look, but he forced himself to wait. Charlie's voice broke the silence. "Wow!" he was shouting. "Just look at that! It's incredible!" "I can't believe it," Grandpa Joe was yelling. "They're getting younger and younger. They really are. Just look at Grandpa George's hair." "Mother," shouted Mrs. Bucket to Grandma Georgina. "Oh, Mother, you're beautiful. You're so young. And just look at Dad," she went on, pointing to Grandpa George. "Isn't he handsome?" "What's it feel like, Josie?" asked Grandpa Joe excitedly. "Tell us what it feels like to be back to 30 again. Wait a minute. You look younger than 30. You can't be a day more than 20 now. But that's enough, isn't it? I'd stop there if I were you. 20's quite young enough." Mr. Wonka shook his head sadly and passed a hand over his eyes. Had you been standing very close to him, you would have heard him murmuring softly under his breath, "Oh, dearie, dearie me, here we go again." "Mother!" cried Mrs. Bucket, and now there was a shrill note of alarm in her voice. "Why don't you stop, Mother? You're going too far. You're way under 20. You can't be more than 15. You're 10. You're getting smaller, Mother." "Josie!" shouted Grandpa Joe. "Hey, Josie! Don't do it, Josie! You're shrinking! You're a little girl! Stop her, somebody, quick!" "They're all going too far," cried Charlie. "They took too much," said Mr. Bucket. "Mother's shrinking faster than any of them," wailed Mrs. Bucket. "Mother, can't you hear me, Mother? Can't you stop?" "My heavens, isn't it quick?" said Mr. Bucket, who seemed to be the only one enjoying it. "It really is a year a second." "But they've hardly got any more years left," wailed Grandpa Joe. "Mother's no more than 4 now," Mrs. Bucket cried out. "She's 3, 2, 1. Gracious me, what's happening to her? Where's she gone? Mother, Georgina, where are you? Mr. Wonka, come quickly, come here, Mr. Wonka. Something frightful's happened, something's gone wrong. My old mother's disappeared." Mr. Wonka sighed and turned around and walked slowly and quite calmly back toward the bed. "Where's my mother?" bawled Mrs. Bucket. "Look at Josephine," cried Grandpa Joe. "Just look at her, I ask you." Mr. Wonka looked first at Grandma Josephine. She was sitting in the middle of the huge bed, bawling her head off. "Wah, wah," she said. "Wah, wah, wah, wah." "She's a screaming baby," cried Grandpa Joe. "I've got a screaming baby for a wife." "The other one's Grandpa George," Mr. Bucket said, smiling happily. "The slightly bigger one there crawling around. He's my wife's father." "That's right. He's my father," wailed Mrs. Bucket. "And where's Georgina, my old mother? She's vanished. She's nowhere, Mr. Wonka." "Ladies and gentlemen," said Mr. Wonka, coming up close and raising both hands for silence, "please, I beg you, do not ruffle yourselves. There's nothing to worry about." "You call it nothing," cried poor Mrs. Bucket, "when my old mother's gone down the drain, and my father's a howling baby." "A lovely baby," said Mr. Wonka. "I quite agree," said Mr. Bucket. "What about my Josie?" cried Grandpa Joe. "What about her?" said Mr. Wonka. "Well, a great improvement, sir," said Mr. Wonka. "Don't you agree?" "Oh, yes," said Grandpa Joe. "I mean, no. What am I saying? She's a howling baby." "But in perfect health," said Mr. Wonka. "May I ask you, sir, how many pills she took?" "4," said Grandpa Joe glumly. "They all took 4. Mr. Wonka made a wheezing noise in his throat, and a look of great sorrow came over his face. "Why, oh, why can't people be more sensible?" he said sadly. "Why don't they listen to me when I tell them something? I explained very carefully beforehand that each pill makes the taker exactly 20 years younger. So if Grandma Josephine took 4 of them, she automatically became younger by 4 times 20, which is... Wait a minute now. 4 2 are 8, add a 0, that's 80. So automatically she became younger by 80 years. How old, sir, was your wife, if I may ask, before this happened?" "She was 80 last birthday," Grandpa Joe answered. "She was 80 in 3 months. "There you are, then," cried Mr. Wonka, flashing a happy smile. "The Wonkavite worked perfectly. She is now precisely 3 months old." "Madam," said Mr. Wonka, turning to Mrs. Bucket, "how old, may I ask, was Grandpa George, your father?" 81, wailed Mrs. Bucket. "He was 81 exactly." "Which makes him a great big bouncing 1-year-old boy now," said Mr. Wonka happily. "How splendid," said Mr. Bucket to his wife. "You'll be the first person in the world to change her father's nappies." "He can change his own rotten nappies," said Mrs. Bucket. "What I want to know is, where's my mother? Where's Grandma Georgina?" "Aha," said Mr. Wonka. "Oh, yes, indeed. Where, oh, where has Georgina gone? How old, please, was the lady in question?" 78, Mrs. Bucket told him. "Well, of course," laughed Mr. Wonka. "That explains it." "What explains what?" snapped Mrs. Bucket. "My dear madam," said Mr. Wonka, "if she was only 78 and she took enough Wonkavite to make her 80 years younger, then naturally she's vanished. She's bitten off more than she could chew. She's taken off more years than she had." "Explain yourself," said Mrs. Bucket. "Simple arithmetic," said Mr. Wonka. "Subtract 80 from 78, and what do you get?" -2, said Charlie. "Hooray!" said Mr. Bucket. "My mother-in-law's -2 years old." "Impossible," said Mrs. Bucket. "It's true," said Mr. Wonka. "And where is she now, may I ask?" said Mrs. Bucket. "That's a good question," said Mr. Wonka. "A very good question. Yes, indeed. Where is she now?" "You don't have the foggiest idea, do you?" "Of course I do," said Mr. Wonka. "I know exactly where she is." "Then tell me." "You must try to understand," said Mr. Wonka, "that if she is now -2, she's got to add 2 more years before she can start again from naught. She's got to wait it out." "Where does she wait?" said Mrs. Bucket. "In the waiting room, of course," said Mr. Wonka. Side 3.
"It's up to you, Charlie, my boy," said Mr. Wonka. "It's your factory."
"You don't really mean you might be able to bring her back?" cried Charlie.
"There's no harm in trying, is there? If that's the way you want it."
"Oh, yes, of course I do, for Mother's sake especially. Can't you see how sad she is?"
Mrs. Bucket was sitting on the edge of the big bed, dabbing her eyes with a hanky.
"My poor old mum," she kept saying. "She's minus too, and I won't see her again for months and months and months, if ever at all."
Behind her, Grandpa Joe, with the help of the Oompa Loompa, was feeding his 3-month-old wife, Grandma Josephine, from a bottle. Alongside them, Mr. Bucket was spooning something called Wonka's Spudge-Mallow baby food into 1-year-old Grandpa George's mouth, but mostly all over his chin and chest. "Come along, Charlie. We're off to hunt for Grandma." Mr. Wonka caught Charlie by the arm and went dancing towards the open door of the great glass elevator. "Hurry up, my dear boy, hurry up," he cried. "We've got to hustle if we're going to get there before."
"Before what, Mr. Wonka?"
"Before she gets subtracted, of course. All minuses are subtracted. Don't you know any arithmetic at all?" They were in the elevator now, and Mr. Wonka was searching among the hundreds of buttons for the one he wanted. "Here we are," he said, placing his finger delicately upon a tiny ivory button on which it said, "Minus Land." The doors slid shut, and then, with a fearful whistling whirring sound, the great machine leapt away to the right. Charlie grabbed Mr. Wonka's legs and held on for dear life. Mr. Wonka pulled a jump seat out of the wall and said, "Sit down, Charlie, quick, and strap yourself in tight. This journey's going to be rough and choppy." There were straps on either side of the seat, and Charlie buckled himself firmly in. Mr. Wonka pulled out a second seat for himself and did the same. "We are going a long way down," he said. "Oh, such a long way down are we going." The elevator was gathering speed. It twisted and swerved. It swung sharply to the left, then it went right, then left again. It was heading downward all the time, down and down and down. "I only hope," said Mr. Wonka, "the Oompa Loompas aren't using the other elevator today."
"What other elevator?" asked Charlie.
"The one that goes the opposite way on the same track as this."
"Holy snakes, Mr. Wonka, you mean we might have a collision?"
"I've always been lucky so far, my boy. Hey, take a look out there, quick."
Through the window, Charlie caught a glimpse of what seemed like an enormous quarry with a steep, craggy brown rock face, and all over the rock face there were hundreds of Oompa Loompas working with picks and pneumatic drills.
"Rock candy," said Mr. Wonka. "That's the richest deposit of rock candy in the world." The elevator sped on. "We're going deeper, Charlie, deeper and deeper. We're about 200,000 feet down already." Strange sights were flashing by outside, but the elevator was travelling at such a terrific speed that only occasionally was Charlie able to recognise anything at all. Once he thought he saw in the distance a cluster of tiny houses shaped like upside-down cups, and there were streets in between the houses and Oompa Loompas walking in the streets. Another time, as they were passing some sort of vast red plain dotted with things that looked like oil derricks, he saw a great spout of brown liquid spurting out of the ground high into the air. "A gusher!" cried Mr. Wonka, clapping his hands. "A whacking great gusher! How splendid! Just when we needed it!"
"A what?" said Charlie.
"We've struck chocolate again, my boy. There'll be a rich new field. Oh, what a beautiful gusher! Just look at it go!" On they roared, heading downward more steeply than ever now, and hundreds, literally hundreds, of astonishing sights kept flashing by outside. "You realise," said Mr. Wonka, "that what you saw earlier on when you went round the factory with all those naughty little children was only a tiny corner of the establishment. It goes down for miles and miles, and as soon as possible I will show you all the way round, slowly and properly, but that will take 3 weeks. Right now we have other things to think about, and I have important things to tell you. Listen carefully to me, Charlie. I must talk fast, for we'll be there in a couple of minutes." "I suppose you guessed," Mr. Wonka went on, "what happened to all those Oompa Loompas in the testing room when I was experimenting with the Wonkavite. Of course you did.
They disappeared and became minuses just like your Grandma Georgina. The recipe was miles too strong. One of them actually became minus 87. Imagine that. You mean he's got to wait 87 years before he can come back? Charlie asked. That's what kept bugging me, my boy. After all, one can't allow one's best friends to wait around as miserable minuses for 87 years. And get subtracted as well, said Charlie. That would be frightful. Of course it would, Charlie. So what did I do? Willy Wonka, I said to myself, if you can invent Wonkavite to make people younger, then surely to goodness you can also invent something else to make people older. Aha, cried Charlie. I see what you're getting at. You could turn the minuses quickly back into pluses and bring them home again. Precisely, my dear boy, precisely. Always supposing, of course, that I could find out where the minuses had gone to. The elevator plunged on, diving steeply downward toward the centre of the earth. All was blackness outside now. There was nothing to be seen. So once again, Mr. Wonka went on, I rolled up my sleeves and set to work. Once again I squeezed my brains searching for the new recipe. I had to create age, to make people old, older, oldest. Ha-ha, I cried, for now the ideas were beginning to come. What is the oldest living thing in the world? What lives longer than anything else? A tree, Charlie said. Right you are, Charlie, but what kind of tree? Not the Douglas fir, not the oak, not the cedar. No, my boy. It's a tree called the bristlecone pine that grows upon the slopes of Wheeler Park in Nevada, USA. You can find bristlecone pines on Wheeler Peak today, and they are over 4,000 years old. This is a fact, Charlie. Ask any dendrochronologist you like, and look up that word in the dictionary, will you, please? So that started me off. I jumped into the great glass elevator and rushed all over the world collecting special items from the oldest living things. A pint of sap from a 4,000-year-old bristlecone pine, the toenail clippings from a 168-year-old Russian farmer called Petrovich Grigorovich, an egg laid by a 22-year-old tortoise belonging to the King of Tonga, the tail of a 51-year-old horse in Arabia, the whiskers of a 36-year-old cat called Crumpets, an old flea which had lived on crumpets for 36 years, the tail of a 207-year-old giant rat from Tibet, the black teeth of a 97-year-old grimalkin living in a cave on Mount Popocatépetl, the knuckle bones of a 700-year-old cataloo from Peru. All over the world, Charlie, I tracked down very old and ancient animals and took an important little bit of something from each one of them. A hair or an eyebrow, or sometimes it was no more than an ounce or two of the jam scraped from between its toes while it was sleeping. I tracked down the whistle pig, the bobolink, the scrock, the polyfrog, the giant curlicue, the stinging slug, and the venomous squircle, who can spit poison right into your eye from 50 yards away. But there's no time to tell you about them all now, Charlie. Just let me say quickly that in the end, after lots of boiling and bubbling and mixing and testing in my inventing room, I produced one tiny cupful of oily black liquid and gave 4 drops of it to a brave 20-year-old Oompa Loompa volunteer to see what happened. What did happen? Charlie asked. The moment he swallowed it, he began wrinkling and shrivelling up all over, and his hair started dropping off, and his teeth started falling out, and before I knew it, he had suddenly become an old fellow of 75. And thus, my dear Charlie, was Vita Wonk invented. Did you rescue all the Oompa Loompa minuses, Mr. Wonka? Every single one of them, my boy. 131 all told. Mind you, it wasn't quite as easy as that. There were lots of snags and complications along the way. Good heavens, we're nearly there. I must stop talking now and watch where we're going. Charlie realized that the elevator was no longer rushing and roaring. It was hardly moving at all now. It seemed to be drifting. Undo your straps, Mr. Wonka said. We must get ready for action. Charlie undid his straps and stood up and peered out. It was an eerie sight. They were drifting in a heavy grey mist. Mr. Wonka slid open the doors. Stand back, he said. Don't fall out, Charlie, whatever you do. The mist came into the elevator. It had the fusty, reeky smell of an old underground dungeon. The silence was overpowering. There was no sound at all, no whisper of wind, no voice of creature or insect, and it gave Charlie a queer, frightening feeling to be standing there in the middle of this grey, inhuman nothingness, as though he were in another world altogether, in some place where man should never be. "Miner's Land," whispered Mr. Wonka. "This is it, Charlie. The problem now is to find her. We may be lucky, and there again we may not." "I don't like it here at all," Charlie whispered. "It gives me the willies." "Me too," Mr. Wonka whispered back. "But we've got a job to do, Charlie, and we must go through with it." The mist was condensing now on the glass walls of the elevator, making it difficult to see out except through the open doors. "Do any other creatures live here, Mr. Wonka?" "Plenty of gannoulis." "Are they dangerous?" "If they bite you, they are. You're a goner, my boy, if you're bitten by a gannouli." The elevator drifted on, rocking gently from side to side. The grey-black, oily fog swirled around them. "What does a gannouli look like, Mr. Wonka?" "They don't look like anything, Charlie. They can't." "You mean you've never seen one?" "You can't see gannoulis, my boy. You can't even feel them. Until they puncture your skin, then it's too late. They've got you." "You mean there might be swarms of them all around us this very moment?" Charlie asked. "There might," said Mr. Wonka. Charlie felt his skin beginning to creep. "Do you die at once?" he asked. "First you become subtracted. A little later you are divided. But very slowly. It takes a long time. It's long division, and it's very painful. After that, you become one of them." "Couldn't we shut the door?" Charlie asked. "I'm afraid not, my boy. We'd never see her through the glass. There's too much mist and moisture. She's not going to be easy to pick out anyway." Charlie stood at the open door of the elevator and stared into the swirling vapours. This, he thought, is what hell must be like. Hell without heat. Charlie felt a jab on his arm. He jumped. He almost jumped out of the elevator. "Sorry," said Mr. Wonka. "It's only me." "Oh," Charlie gasped. "For a second I thought—" "I know what you thought, Charlie. And by the way, I'm awfully glad you're with me. How would you like to come here alone, as I did, as I had to, many times?" "I wouldn't," said Charlie. "There she is," said Mr. Wonka, pointing. "No, she isn't. Oh, dear, I could have sworn I saw her. Keep watching, Charlie." "There," said Charlie. "Over there. Look." "Where?" said Mr. Wonka. "Point to her, Charlie." She's gone again." "Sort of faded away," Charlie said. They stood at the open door of the elevator, peering into the swirly grey vapours. "There, quick, right there," Charlie cried. "Can't you see her?" "Yes, Charlie, I see her. I'm moving up close now." Mr. Wonka reached behind him and began touching a number of buttons. "Grandma," Charlie cried out. "We've come to get you, Grandma." They could see her faintly through the mist, but oh, so faintly. And they could see the mist through her as well. She was transparent. She was hardly there at all. She was no more than a shadow. They could see her face and just the faintest outline of her body swathed in a sort of gown. But she wasn't upright. She was floating lengthwise in the swirling vapour. "Why is she lying down?" Charlie whispered. "Because she's a Minus, Charlie. Surely you know what a Minus looks like." The elevator glided close. The ghostly shadow of Grandma Georgina's face was no more than a yard away now. Charlie reached out through the door to touch her, but there was nothing there to touch. His hand went right through her skin. "Grandma," he gasped. She began to drift away. "Stand back," ordered Mr. Wonka, and suddenly, from some secret place inside his coat-tails, he whisked out a spray gun. It was one of those old-fashioned things people used to use for spraying fly spray around the room before aerosols came along. He aimed the spray gun straight at the shadow of Grandma Georgina and pumped the handle hard, once, twice, 3 times. Each time, a fine black spray spurted out from the nozzle of the gun. Instantly, Grandma Georgina disappeared. "A Bullseye, cried Mr Wonka, jumping up and down with excitement. I got her with both barrels. I plussed her good and proper. That's Vita Wonk for you. Where's she gone? Charlie asked. Back where she came from, of course, to the factory. She's a minus no longer, my boy. She's a 100% red-blooded plus. Come along now. Let's get out of here quickly before the Ganoulis find us. Mr Wonka jabbed a button. The doors closed, and the great glass elevator shot upwards for home. Sit down and strap yourself in again, Charlie, said Mr Wonka. We're going flat out this time. The elevator roared and rocketed up towards the surface of the earth. Mr Wonka and Charlie sat side by side on their little jump seats, strapped in tight. Mr Wonka started tucking the spray gun back into that enormous pocket somewhere in his coat-tails. It's such a pity one has to use a clumsy old thing like this, he said, but there's simply no other way of doing it. Ideally, of course, one would measure out exactly the right number of drops in a teaspoon and feed it carefully into the mouth. But it's impossible to feed anything into a minus. It's like trying to feed one's own shadow. That's why I've got to use a spray gun. It worked fine, though, didn't it? Charlie said. Oh, it worked all right, Charlie. It worked beautifully. All I'm saying is that there's bound to be a slight overdose. I don't know quite what you mean, Mr Wonka. My dear boy, if it only takes 4 drops of Vita Wonk to turn a young Oompa Loompa into an old man— Mr Wonka lifted his hands and let them fall limply onto his lap. You mean Grandma may have got too much? Asked Charlie, turning slightly pale. I'm afraid that's putting it rather mildly, said Mr Wonka. But why did you give her such a lot of it then? Said Charlie, getting more and more worried. Why did you spray her 3 times? She must have got pints and pints of it. Gallons, cried Mr Wonka, slapping his thighs. Gallons and gallons. But don't let a little thing like that bother you, my dear Charlie. The important part of it is we've got her back. She's a minus no longer. She's a lovely plus. She's as plussy can be. She's more plussy than you or than me. The question is how. Just how old is she now? Is she more than 103? We return in triumph, Charlie, cried Mr Wonka as the great glass elevator began to slow down. Once more your dear family will all be together again. The elevator stopped. The doors slid open, and there was the chocolate room and the chocolate river and the Oompa Loompas, and in the middle of it all the great bed belonging to the old grandparents. Charlie, said Grandpa Joe, rushing forward, thank heavens you're back. Charlie hugged him. Then he hugged his mother and his father. Is she here? He said. Grandma Georgina? Nobody answered. Nobody did anything except Grandpa Joe, who pointed to the bed. He pointed, but he didn't look where he was pointing. None of them looked at the bed, except Charlie. He walked past them all to get a better view, and he saw at one end the 2 babies, Grandma Josephine and Grandpa George, both tucked in and sleeping peacefully. At the other end— Don't be alarmed, said Mr Wonka, running up and placing a hand on Charlie's arm. She's bound to be just a teeny bit overplussed. What have you done to her? Cried Mrs Bucket. My poor old mother! Propped up against the pillows at the other end of the bed was the most extraordinary-looking thing Charlie had ever seen. Was it some ancient fossil? It couldn't be that, because it was moving slightly. Well, 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 it croaked. If it isn't dear Charlie. Grandma, cried Charlie. Grandma Georgina! Oh, oh, oh! Her tiny face was like a pickled walnut. There were such masses of creases and wrinkles that the mouth and eyes and even the nose were sunken almost out of sight. Her hair was pure white, and her hands, which were resting on top of the blanket, were just little lumps of wrinkly skin. The presence of this ancient creature seemed to have terrified not only Mr and Mrs Bucket, but Grandpa Joe as well. Mr Wonka, on the other hand, was as happy as ever. My dear lady, he cried, advancing to the edge of the bed and clasping one of those tiny wrinkled hands in both of his. Welcome home, and how are you feeling on this bright and glorious day? Not too bad, croaked Grandma Georgina. Not too bad at all, considering my age. Good for you, said Mr Wonka. Atta girl.
All we've got to do now is find out exactly how old you are. Then we shall be able to take further action." "You're taking no further action around here," said Mrs. Bucket, tight-lipped. "You've done enough damage already." "But, my dear old muddle-headed mugwump," said Mr. Wonka, turning to Mrs. Bucket, "what does it matter that the old girl has become a trifle too old? We can put that right in a jiffy. Have you forgotten Wonkavite, and how every tablet makes you 20 years younger? We shall bring her back. We shall transform her into a blossoming, blushing maiden in the twink of an eye." "What good is that when her husband's not even out of his nappies yet?" wailed Mrs. Bucket, pointing a finger at the 1-year-old Grandpa George so peacefully sleeping. "Madam," said Mr. Wonka, "let us do one thing at a time." "I forbid you to give her that beastly Wonkavite," said Mrs. Bucket. "You'll turn her into a minus again just as sure as I'm standing here."
"I don't want to be a minus," croaked Grandma Georgina. "If I ever have to go back to that beastly minus land again, the Ganoulis will knickle me."
"Fear not," said Mr. Wonka. "This time I myself will supervise the giving of the medicine. But listen very carefully now. I cannot work out how many pills to give you until I know exactly how old you are. That's obvious, isn't it?" "It's not obvious at all," said Mrs. Bucket. "Why can't you give her one pill at a time and play it safe?" "Impossible, madam. In very serious cases such as this one, Wonkavite doesn't work at all when given in small doses. A single pill wouldn't even begin to shift her. She's too far gone for that. It's all or nothing. Now then, how old are you, my dear Grandma Georgina?"
"I don't know," she croaked. "I lost count of that years and years ago."
"Don't you have any idea?" said Mr. Wonka.
"Of course I don't," gibbered the old woman. "Nor would you, if you were as old as I am."
"Think," said Mr. Wonka. "You've got to think." The tiny old wrinkled brown walnut face wrinkled itself up more than ever. "Are you, for example, 100, said Mr. Wonka, or 110, or 120?
"It's no good," she croaked. "I never did have a head for numbers."
"This is a catastrophe," cried Mr. Wonka. "If you can't tell me how old you are, I can't help you. I dare not risk an overdose." Gloom settled upon the entire company, including for once Mr. Wonka himself. "You've messed it up good and proper this time, haven't you?" said Mrs. Bucket. "Grandma," Charlie said, moving forward to the bed. "Listen, Grandma. Don't worry about exactly how old you might be. Try and think of a happening instead. Think of something that happened to you. Anything you like, as far back as you can. It may help us."
"Oh, lots of things happened to me, Charlie. So many things happened to me."
"But can you remember any of them, Grandma?"
"Oh, I don't know, my darling. I suppose I could remember one or two if I thought hard enough."
"Good, Grandma, good," said Charlie eagerly. "Now, what is the very earliest thing you can remember in your whole life?"
"Oh, my dear boy, that really would be going back a few years, wouldn't it?"
"When you were little, Grandma, like me. Can't you remember anything you did when you were little?" The tiny sunken black eyes glimmered faintly, and a sort of smile touched the corners of the almost invisible little slit of a mouth.
"There was a ship," she said. "I can remember a ship. Couldn't ever forget that ship."
"Go on, Grandma. A ship? What sort of a ship? Did you sail on her?"
"Of course I sailed on her, my darling. We all sailed on her."
"Where from? Where to?" Charlie went on eagerly.
"Oh, no, I couldn't tell you that. I was just a tiny little girl."
She lay back on the pillow and closed her eyes. Everybody waited.
"It had a lovely name, that ship. There was something beautiful, something so beautiful about that name. But of course I couldn't possibly remember it."
Charlie, who'd been sitting on the edge of the bed, suddenly jumped up. "If I said the name, Grandma, would you remember it then?"
"I might, Charlie. Yes, I think I might."
"The Mayflower!" cried Charlie. The old woman's head jerked up off the pillow.
"That's it," she croaked. "You've got it, Charlie. The Mayflower. Such a lovely name."
"Grandpa," Charlie called out, dancing with excitement, "what year did the Mayflower sail for America?"
"The Mayflower sailed out of Plymouth Harbour on September the 6th, 1620, said Grandpa Joe. "Plymouth," croaked the old woman. "That rings a bell, too. Yes, it might easily have been Plymouth."
1620, cried Charlie. "Oh, my heavens above! That means you're... Oh, you do it, Grandpa."
"Well, now," said Grandpa Joe, "take 1620 away from 1972. That leaves... Oh, don't rush me now, Charlie. That leaves 352.
"Jumping jackrabbits," yelled Mr. Bucket. "She's 352 years old." "She's more," said Charlie. "How old did you say you were, Grandma, when you sailed on the Mayflower? Were you about 8?
"Oh, I think I was even younger than that, my darling. I was only a bitty little girl, probably no more than 6.
"Then she's 358, gasped Charlie. "That's Vita Wonk for you," said Mr. Wonka proudly. "I told you it was powerful stuff." "My poor old mother," wailed Mrs. Bucket. "What on earth—" "Patience, dear lady," said Mr. Wonka. "Now comes the interesting part. Bring on the Wonkavite." An Oompa Loompa ran forward with a large bottle and gave it to Mr. Wonka. He put it on the bed. "How young does she want to be?" he asked. 78, said Mrs. Bucket firmly. "Exactly where she was before all this nonsense started." "Surely she'd like to be a bit younger than that," said Mr. Wonka. "Certainly not," said Mrs. Bucket. "It's too risky."
"Too risky, too risky," croaked Grandma Georgina. "You'll only minus me again if you try to be too clever."
"Have it your own way," said Mr. Wonka. "Now then, I've got to do a few sums." Another Oompa Loompa trotted forward, holding up a blackboard. Mr. Wonka took a piece of chalk from his pocket and wrote, "Present age of person, 358. Age she wants to be, subtract this, 78. Number of years younger she must become, 280. If each pill of Wonkavite makes you 20 years younger, we must divide 280 by 20 to find out how many pills to give. 14. 14 pills of Wonkavite exactly," said Mr. Wonka. The Oompa Loompa took the blackboard away. Mr. Wonka picked up the bottle from the bed and opened it and counted out 14 of the little brilliant yellow pills. "Water," he said. Yet another Oompa Loompa ran forward with a glass of water. Mr. Wonka tipped all 14 pills into the glass. The water bubbled and frothed. "Drink it while it's fizzing," he said, holding the glass up to Grandma Georgina's lips. "All in one gulp." She drank it. Mr. Wonka sprang back and took a large brass clock from his pocket. "Don't forget," he cried, "it's a year a second. She's got 280 years to lose. That'll take her 4 minutes and 40 seconds. Watch the centuries fall away." The room was so silent they could hear the ticking of Mr. Wonka's clock. At first nothing much happened to the ancient person lying on the bed. She closed her eyes and lay back. Now and again the puckered skin of her face gave a twitch, and her little hands jerked up and down, but that was all. "1 minute gone," called Mr. Wonka. "She's 60 years younger." "She looks just the same to me," said Mr. Bucket. "Of course she does," said Mr. Wonka. "What's a mere 60 years when you're over 300 to start with?" "Are you all right, Mother?" said Mrs. Bucket anxiously. "Talk to me, Mother." 2 minutes gone," called Mr. Wonka. "She's 120 years younger." And now definite changes were beginning to show in the old woman's face. The skin was quivering all over, and some of the deepest wrinkles were becoming less and less deep, the mouth less sunken, the nose more prominent. Suddenly, with a suddenness that made everyone jump, the old woman sat bolt upright in bed and shouted, "Did you hear the news? Admiral Nelson has beaten the French at Trafalgar." "She's going crazy," said Mr. Bucket. "Not at all," said Mr. Wonka. "She's going through the 19th century. 3 minutes gone," said Mr. Wonka. Every second now she was growing slightly less and less shriveled, becoming more and more lively. It was a marvellous thing to watch.
Gettysburg, she cried. General Lee is on the run. And a few seconds later she let out a great wail of anguish and said, He's dead, he's dead, he's dead. Who's dead? Said Mr. Bucket, craning forward. Lincoln, she wailed. There goes the train. She must have seen it, said Charlie. She must have been there. She is there, said Mr. Wonka. At least she was a few seconds ago. Will someone please explain to me, said Mrs. Bucket. What on earth— 4 minutes gone, said Mr. Wonka. Only 40 seconds left. Only 40 more years to lose. Grandma, cried Charlie, running forward. You're looking almost exactly like you used to. Oh, I'm so glad. Just as long as it stops when it's meant to, said Mrs. Bucket. I'll bet it doesn't, said Mr. Bucket. Something always goes wrong. Not when I'm in charge of it, sir, said Mr. Wonka. Time's up. She is now 78 years old. How do you feel, dear lady? Is everything all right? I feel tolerable, she said. Just tolerable, but that's no thanks to you, you meddling old mackerel. There she was again, the same cantankerous, grumbling old Grandma Georgina that Charlie had known so well before it all started. Mrs. Bucket flung her arms around her and began weeping with joy. The old woman pushed her aside and said, What, may I ask, are those 2 silly babies doing at the other end of the bed? One of them's your husband, said Mr. Bucket. Rubbish, she said. Where is George? I'm afraid it's true, Mother, said Mrs. Bucket. That's him on the left. The other one's Josephine. You chiselling old cheeseburger, she shouted, pointing a fierce finger at Mr. Wonka. What in the name of— Now, said Mr. Wonka. Let us not for mercy's sake have another row so late in the day. If everyone will keep their hair on and leave this to Charlie and me, we shall have them exactly where they used to be in the flick of a fly's wing. Bring on the Vita-Wonk, said Mr. Wonka. We'll soon fix these 2 babies. And Oompa Loompa ran forward with a small bottle and a couple of silver teaspoons. Just 1 minute, snapped Grandma Georgina. What sort of devilish dumpery are you up to now? It's all right, Grandma, said Charlie. I promise you it's all right. Vita-Wonk does the opposite to Wonkavite. It makes you older. It's what we gave you when you were a minus. It saved you. You gave me too much, snapped the old woman. We had to, Grandma, and now you want to do the same to Grandpa George. Of course we don't, said Charlie. I finished up 358 years old, she went on. What's to stop you making another little mistake and giving him 50 times more than you gave me? Grandma, Charlie said patiently, with you we had to use a spray because you were a minus. You were a ghost. But here Mr. Wonka can— Don't talk to me about that man, she cried. He's batty as a bullfrog. No, Grandma, he is not. And here he can measure it out exactly right, drop by drop, and feed it into their mouths. That's true, isn't it, Mr. Wonka? Charlie, said Mr. Wonka, I can see that the factory is going to be in good hands when I retire. You'll learn very fast. I'm so pleased I chose you, my dear boy, so very pleased. Now then, what's the verdict? Do we leave them as babies, or do we grow them up with Vita-Wonk? You go ahead, Mr. Wonka, said Grandpa Joe. I'd like you to grow my Josie up so she's just the same as before, 80 years old. Thank you, sir, said Mr. Wonka. I appreciate the confidence you place in me. But what about the other one, Grandpa George? Oh, all right then, said Grandma Georgina. But if he ends up a caveman, I don't want him in this bed any more. That's settled then, said Mr. Wonka. Come along, Charlie. We'll do them both together. You hold 1 spoon and I'll hold the other. I shall measure out 4 drops and 4 drops only into each spoon, and we'll wake them up and pop it into their mouths. Which one shall I do, Mr. Wonka? You do Grandma Josephine, the tiny one. I'll do Grandpa George, the 1-year-old. Here's your spoon. Charlie took the spoon and held it out. Mr. Wonka opened the bottle and dripped 4 drops of oily black liquid into Charlie's spoon. Then he did the same to his own. He handed the bottle back to the Oompa Loompa. All set, Charlie? All set, Mr. Wonka. Charlie moved around the bed to where the tiny sleeping baby lay. He placed one hand behind her head and lifted it. The baby awoke and started yelling. Mr. Wonka was on the other side of the bed doing the same to the 1-year-old George. Both together now, Charlie, said Mr Wonka. Ready, steady, go, pop it in. Charlie pushed his spoon into the open mouth of the baby and tipped the drops down her throat. Make sure she swallows it, cried Mr Wonka. It won't work until it gets into their tummies. It is difficult to explain what happened next, and whatever it was, it only lasted for a second. A second is about as long as it takes you to say aloud and quickly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that is how long it took, with Charlie watching closely, for the tiny baby to grow and swell and wrinkle into the 80-year-old Grandma Josephine. It was a frightening thing to see. It was like an explosion. A small baby suddenly exploded into an old woman, and Charlie all at once found himself staring straight into the well-known and much-loved wrinkly old face of his Grandma Josephine. "Hello, my darling," she said. "Where have you come from?" "Josie," cried Grandpa Joe, rushing forward. "How marvellous! You're back." "I didn't know I'd been away," she said. Grandpa George had also made a successful comeback. "You were better looking as a baby," Grandma Georgina said to him. "But I'm glad you've grown up again, George, for one reason." "What's that?" asked Grandpa George. "You won't wet the bed any more." "I am sure," said Mr Wonka, addressing Grandpa George, Grandma Georgina and Grandma Josephine, "I am quite sure the three of you, after all that, will now want to jump out of bed and lend a hand in running the chocolate factory." "Who, us?" said Grandma Josephine. "Yes, you," said Mr Wonka. "Are you crazy?" said Grandma Georgina. "I'm staying right here where I am, in this nice comfortable bed, thank you very much." "Me too," said Grandpa George. At that moment there was a sudden commotion among the Oompa Loompas at the far end of the chocolate room. There was a buzz of excited chatter and a lot of running about and waving of arms, and out of all this a single Oompa Loompa emerged and came rushing toward Mr Wonka, carrying a huge envelope in his hands. He came up close to Mr Wonka. He started whispering. Mr Wonka bent down low to listen. "Outside the factory gates?" cried Mr Wonka. "Men? What sort of men? Yes, but do they look dangerous? Are they acting dangerously? And a what? A helicopter? And these men came out of it? They gave you this?" Mr Wonka grabbed the huge envelope and quickly slit it open and pulled out the folded letter inside. There was absolute silence as he skimmed swiftly over what was written on the paper. There was a very definite smell of danger in the air. The men outside the gates, the helicopter, the nervousness of the Oompa Loompas. "Great whistling wang-doodles!" cried Mr Wonka, leaping so high in the air that when he landed his legs gave way and he crashed onto his backside. "Snorting snozwangers!" he yelled, picking himself up and waving the letter about as though he was swatting mosquitoes. "Listen to this, all of you! Just you listen to this!" He began to read aloud. "The White House, Washington, D.C., to Mr Willy Wonka. Sir, today the entire nation, indeed the whole world, is rejoicing at the safe return of our transport capsule from space, with 136 souls on board. Had it not been for the help they received from an unknown spaceship, these 136 people would never have come back. It has been reported to me that the courage shown by the 8 astronauts aboard this unknown spaceship was extraordinary. Our radar stations, by tracking the spaceship on its return to Earth, have discovered that it splashed down in a place known as Wonka's Chocolate Factory. That, sir, is why this letter is being delivered to you. I wish now to show the gratitude of the nation by inviting all 8 of those incredibly brave astronauts to come and stay in the White House for a few days as my honored guests. I am arranging a special celebration party in the Blue Room this evening, at which I myself will pin medals for bravery upon all 8 of those gallant flyers. The most important persons in the land will be present at this gathering to salute the heroes whose dazzling deeds will be written forever in the history of our nation. Among those attending will be the Vice President, Miss Elvira Tibbs, all the members of my cabinet, the chiefs of the Army, the Navy, and the Air Force, all members of the Congress, a famous sword swallower from Afghanistan who is now teaching me to eat my words. What you do is take the S off the beginning of the sword and put it on the end before you swallow it. And who else is coming? Oh, yes, my chief interpreter, and the governors of every state in the Union, and of course my cat, Mrs. Towsy-Puss. A helicopter awaits all 8 of you outside the factory gates. I myself await your arrival at the White House with the very greatest pleasure and impatience. I beg to remain, sir, most sincerely yours, Lancelot R. Gilligrass, President of the United States. P.S. Could you please bring me a few Wonka Fudge Mallow Delights? I love them so much, but everybody around here keeps stealing mine out of the drawer in my desk. And don't tell Nanny. Mr. Wonka stopped reading, and in the stillness that followed, Charlie could hear people breathing. And there were other things too. There were so many feelings and passions, and there was so much sudden happiness swirling around in the air, it made his head spin. Grandpa Joe was the first to say something. "Yippee!" he yelled out, and he flew across the room and caught Charlie by the hands, and the two of them started dancing away along the bank of the Chocolate River. "We're going, Charlie," said Grandpa Joe. "We're going to the White House after all." After a minute or so, Mr. Wonka clapped his hands for attention. Come along," he called out. "We mustn't dilly, we mustn't dally. Come on, Charlie, and you, sir, Grandpa Joe, and Mr. and Mrs. Bucket. The helicopter's outside the gates. We can't keep it waiting." "Hey!" screamed Grandma Georgina from the bed. "What about us? We were invited too. Don't you forget that." "It said all 8 of us were invited," cried Grandma Josephine. "And that includes me," said Grandpa George. Mr. Wonka turned and looked at them. "Of course it includes you," he said. "But we can't possibly get that bed into a helicopter. It won't go through the door." You mean if we don't get out of bed we can't come?" said Grandma Georgina. "That's exactly what I mean," said Mr. Wonka. "Keep going, Charlie," he whispered, giving Charlie a little nudge. "Keep walking towards the door." Suddenly, behind them, there was a great swoosh of blankets and sheets and a pinging of bed springs as the 3 old people all exploded out of the bed together. They came sprinting after Mr. Wonka, shouting, "Wait for us! Wait for us!" It was amazing how fast they were running across the floor of the great chocolate room. Mr. Wonka and Charlie and the others stood staring at them in wonder. They leapt across paths and over little bushes like gazelles in springtime, with their bare legs flashing and their nightshirts flying out behind them. Suddenly Grandma Josephine put the brakes on so hard she skidded 5 yards before coming to a stop. "Wait!" she screamed. "We must be mad! We can't go to a famous party in the White House in our nightshirts! We can't stand there practically naked in front of all those people while the President pins medals all over us." "Oh!" wailed Grandma Georgina. "What are we going to do?" "Don't you have any clothes with you at all?" asked Mr. Wonka. "Of course we don't," said Grandma Josephine. "We haven't been out of that bed for 20 years. "We can't go," wailed Grandma Georgina. "We'll have to stay behind." "Couldn't we buy something from a store?" said Grandpa George. "With what?" said Grandma Josephine. "We don't have any money." "Money?" cried Mr. Wonka. "Good gracious me! Don't you go worrying about money. I've got plenty of that." "Listen," said Charlie. "Why couldn't we ask the helicopter to land on the roof of a big shop on the way over? Then you could all pop downstairs and buy exactly what you want." "Charlie," cried Mr. Wonka, grasping him by the hand, "what would we do without you? You're brilliant. Come along, everybody. We're off to stay in the White House." They all linked arms and went dancing out of the chocolate room and along the corridors and out through the front door into the open where the big helicopter was waiting near the factory gates. A group of extremely important-looking gentlemen came toward them and bowed. "Well, Charlie," said Grandpa Joe, "it's certainly been a busy day." "It's not over yet," Charlie said, laughing. "It hasn't even begun." This audio book was produced and published by Penguin Books Limited.